Hello, and welcome back to the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. I'm Jay, here as always with Cole. What's
Hey,
going on, man? It's been a while.
yeah, longer than we meant for the break, but stuff happens, and I know I'm a broken record because I was like, oh, we're hoping to get some momentum in
Yeah,
2024. It has
oh,
not worked that way, but it still always is our intention. So
this is going to be our year.
yeah, this is going to
Whatever
be.
lines up.
Hopefully, this does lead to maybe a period of some consistency. I'm hoping. We'll
Yeah,
see. I'm trying to
we'll
get
work
some
on
other
it.
stuff going just independently on my channel, even if nobody's watching, just because I like to stay, well, not stay, but become busy in a way, just so I'm used to it, so it doesn't become like this hassle that I'm just like, oh, I don't want to bother. Uh, just like even StreamYard was giving me trouble earlier
Yeah,
with my camera and my headphones and stuff. I was like, no, push through.
it's not one thing; it's another, man. I tell you what. But
Yeah, pretty much. Because actually, unrelated to these technical issues, I had issues with my streaming the other night because Jay and I were actually just going to do a live commentary on my channel just to get something done, and my streaming all conked out on me. Well, actually, the computer, and I had to like delete some of the stuff and re-download it and sign back into it. And now it's all fine again. I have no idea what the cause was, but it was just really bad timing because
yeah,
we missed our window.
and it
But
was
we
work.
are gonna do, yeah, we are gonna get around to that. So
Yeah,
we'll see how things go here.
sure.
But anyway, starting tonight, yeah. So this is Welcome to the Dollhouse, 1995. Wasn't so long ago that, or at least, well, it's been a while, but if you go back, it's only a few films ago that we had done a film by Todd Solondz, writer director. He had done Happiness. I don't know how many films ago that was, 3 or 4 or 5, something like that. Not too long ago, but I didn't mind returning to it when it was suggested because we weren't, like I said, we didn't really have much of a plan going forward. We wanted to
We
get
were
something up.
we were trying to find something, and I think Cole suggested a dark comedy, and he couldn't. We weren't able to both find it, which is what happens most of the time when we try to pick something. But
Yeah,
I threw this out, and he was like, "Cool, let's do it." So
yeah. I eventually found this. I think this is on YouTube. I didn't watch it on YouTube because it's not great quality there, but it is there for people that are interested. It is still up. I watched it. It's on Internet Archive in pretty good quality, so that's where I actually wound up watching it. It said it might be in the U.S. It might be on Tubi in the U.S., but it's not for me.
do you not have Tubi at all?
Oh, I have it. It's just different, I guess.
It's different too. Fuck.
Yeah, I like it though because it's how I've seen a lot of martial arts films over the years.
Yeah,
It was Tubi, which is pretty great.
if
So, and
they're
actually,
usually
right,
better with the commercials than some of the other streaming things. Like they'll usually throw like 3 at you, like right out of the gate, and then let you watch like a decent amount.
yeah, I found like if you're watching a movie and stopping it at certain points, like that can affect things. Like if you stop it for 10 minutes and then come back, and then you stop it for 15 minutes and come back, like, which is not generally how I watch movies. So sometimes it happens, right? It can make the commercials sort of either jump to a different place or just hit you with 3 in a row in one spot. It seems to go just by how long you had the thing open and not necessarily how long you've been playing it. I don't know. Obviously, there's some sort of quota they have to fill. Anyway, I accept it all because it's free. You don't pay for Tubi, which is pretty good. So I accept it there. But yeah, I'm annoyed because just recently they changed Prime, so now that they have limited ads. But that's enough. To me, that just eliminates it as something as an option for doing like a live commentary because nobody wants to get interrupted by fucking ads when you're trying to sync up and do something with.
Well, and the ads don't sync up if you're watching with someone watching this.
Yeah. Even if they're watching on the same thing, the ads don't sync up either, so it doesn't even work from that. So that's annoying as hell. But no, I'm not willing to pay more for that. It's just annoying. I mean, everything's obviously gone up. But yeah, we can talk about it later. But yeah, Tubi's been really a good resource for a lot of martial arts movies and stuff like that. Like that's how I saw SPL Killzone for the first time. That's how I saw The Inspector Wears Skirts. And just recently, I was really thrilled to find out. And this is on US because the people that had tweeted it out, who I follow, I think they were in the U.S. So it's on the U.S. too. Was what's it called? It's the not Heroic. The Avenging Quartet is on there, which on paper sounds like it should be like one of the greatest Hong Kong action movies of all time because of the star power, particularly female stars in it. But it does not come together that way. It's still worth watching, but it's like an incoherent movie that does not live up to its awesome potential at all. But it's still worth watching. But that had Cynthia Khan in there, among others. Now I'm going to blank, but the Japanese one, I can't remember her name, who's awesome. Okami. But anyway, and also, there's another Japanese actress too, the bodybuilder one. Anyway, and to round that out, who is our other Chinese actress? Because yeah, 2 Chinese actresses, 2 Japanese actresses. I already said Cynthia Khan is one. Who the hell is the other one? Oh, well, doesn't matter. But anyway, it is on there. I'd recommend it, even though, as I said, it's not as good as it sounds. And the way I guess the movie was marketed, calling it because all 4 are in it, but like they're not like all on the same side, and even the ones that are on the same side aren't exactly together. But if you look at the poster, it's like a badass shot of them all like on motorcycles with cool guns. It's like, oh yeah, it still does have some good fight scenes and stuff. But yeah, it's called the Avenging Quartet, which is pretty cool. But anyway, I was just saying, Tubi's a pretty good resource for a lot of martial arts movies. Although quality sort of varies wildly, and not just the quality of the movie, but like the quality of like the picture you're getting and stuff like that. Like there's like some really low budget ones that look like crap, and not all of them have English subtitles. That's also a hit and miss for a lot of the.
Oh yeah.
It's not just American movies. I just found there's a lot of foreign movies on Tubi, but you can't take for granted they'll all have English subtitles. Sometimes they just don't. So that's kind of a hit and miss thing too. But anyway, it's still a pretty cool option because it's free. But yeah, I was annoyed because I was like, I read somewhere that this movie was on Tubi. I was like, Tubi comes through again, but apparently maybe in the US, but not here. Or maybe it was just an outdated post. Maybe it had since been taken down, since stuff was always being added and taken away, which is really the most annoying thing about streaming services. And why people like Jay and I are like physical media people that like buying movies. You can't buy every movie. I love streaming, but still, it really is annoying to know that like at any time they might take stuff off.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, I guess back to the movie.
Right. So this definitely fits the black comedy bill. I was just saying before going, it's another one of those ones that's like a lot of people don't really get black comedy, or maybe they get it, but they still don't see the humor in it, I guess. I guess this movie has an interesting reputation, depending on who you talk to, like pretty much all of Solondz's movies, right? Like you can watch them ultra seriously and just think it's just a horrible parade of the worst humanity has to offer. And you're like, why would I watch that? But I don't know. I find even more so than Happiness, this movie has a really sort of undercurrent of humor in it. Because I mean, yes, it's a very depressing story with what's being told and with our protagonist. But I don't know, even though nothing good happens to this character, it's just mostly a parade of bad things happening to her. I don't know. I don't feel depressed in the movie's over. I don't know. I can relate in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm almost the same age as the character. You know, she's in, I assume, she's probably in 7th grade, I would guess.
Yeah, probably about right.
Yeah,
this would have been 95, and she would have been like 12, 13.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would have been in grade 7 the next year. I was in grade 7 starting in the fall of 96. Or am I screwing that up? 95, 96, 96, 97, 97. Man, yeah, now I'm getting screwed up.
Yeah.
Can't remember my own life, but it's close anyway.
Are relentless, man. Like I got beat up and the usual, but God, they were just all the time at this girl, man. I just
realistic things I've ever seen for bullying. Because usually you see like a Stephen King movie and stuff, like these bullies are full on psychopaths that are like willing to like kill you in public and things like that, which of course is an extremely rare thing. There's mean bullies, and they might even say, I'm going to kill you, but they don't really mean it. Stuff like this. This seems really realistic in the way they talk. It reminds me a lot of the kind of stuff I heard around the same time. Especially like the ultimate insult that boys use for other boys.
Yeah.
Which figures prominently in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it. They say it quite a few times. And that was the original title for the film, right?
Right. So I guess we'll say the words that YouTube doesn't like, because that's what we always do anyway. So, because like the working title, I don't think ever was going to keep it, but to keep it the spirit of the movie was called Faggots and Retards, because those terms get thrown around a lot, which is quite realistic. And I'm not saying kids of today don't say it, but they don't say it like they used to, which is good. And they would get in a lot more trouble. Like there's stuff that happens in front of teachers in this school that like pretty much just goes unpunished Whereas today,
Oh yeah,
it would be
she
a
gets
whole thing.
punished. Like not only that, but she gets punished for the things other kids do.
Right. Yeah. So our character Dawn Wiener is perpetually bullied, and even when she tries to stand up for herself or anything like that, yeah, she wants like a kid copies off her. She tells on him, and she gets punished along with him, and then she gets punished more when she pleads with the teacher for letting her try to do the retest because she was upset, and the teacher just calls her a grade grubber and says, "Don't you have any dignity?" I mean, man, that's one hell of a way to talk to a kid. But I believe it. Again, I believe there's been teachers that shitty and stuff like that. It's funny too because like I'm not one of those like be super tough on them. Like I'm definitely on Don's side, but it does make me think again of how much things have changed. Being about the same age as his character, and it reminds me of a lot of something John Mulaney said, who's like just about a year older than me, talking about how it's like his generation was the last generation before kids became special, which is kind of true. Because I mean, it seemed like because this movie's 1995, 2005 things were already quite different. 2015 is a whole other world of different. And I think it's mostly better, but also I don't think I could stand to be a teacher in today's society. And of course, there's a million reasons why we're underpaid, underappreciated, overworked. But even aside from that, because I feel like in today's society, you can't even like be critical of a kid without you say it like to the wrong kid, and they'll go home and tell their parents. And then their parents calls the school, and they're accusing you of bullying their child and all this shit. When all you said was some, normal disciplinary or critical stuff, like not picking on them at all. But that seems to happen like crazy about like now. I'd be terrified to be a teacher to say anything to a kid.
Now, like the kid is never at fault. Like the parents would just always blame the teacher for picking on the kid or whatever.
Yeah, and I think
we got disciplined by teachers, and then our parents like agreed with the teachers, or at least mine did.
Yeah. Not to bring up Mulaney again, but he said the same thing. He said like about how like kids have so many more rights now, and when as a kid he had no rights because he just said like my parents took all you had to be was any adult, and they would take their side over me because that was the adult. It didn't matter how skeevy or stupid the adult was, anything like that. It's like that's the adult, that's the kid. They were in the right, you were in the wrong. So this movie does make me feel a lot of things like that and things I remember. I don't know, either people block out those years better or they had like, I still remember what it felt like a lot in junior high when that was like, it's funny. I have anxiety now, but the anxiety I had then was completely different. I've had two different stages in my life with two different forms of anxiety. Back then, the anxiety was mostly to do with stuff that didn't have much to do with me. But the anxiety back then that I did have that's kind of like what I have now was just, the anxiety of being in sort of a hostile environment in junior high. I went to a different junior high than what I was supposed to funnel into. I didn't go to the junior high that Ryan, who lived in the same neighborhood as me, went to, and I had to go further. This would have been, I lived in the city proper. I was a city kid, and then there were county kids. This was a county school for the county kids, but I went there because it offered French immersion. So I wasn't the only person who did this. Plenty of kids from other parts who weren't in the county also went for French immersion. But this also kind of put a target on your back because a lot of the county kids who didn't, and of course there were county kids who did take French too, and they mixed in with us. But then there were county kids, this was just their ordinary junior high, and they really resented our presence. They did not like that we were there. And the fact that we were taking French already showed that we thought we were smarter and better than they were. So, there was always a lot of tension there. It's a weird, ironic twist is that, like, when I was born, my first 2 years, I technically lived in that county area. I'm from Sydney, but I lived in the area called Sydney River. And my parents moved for two reasons. One was more important than the other. One was by this time, my sister was turning 5 and I was turning 2. One was our street just happened to have like no kids on the street, and they were kind of hopeful to move somewhere that would also have kids we could play with. Another secondary reason that wasn't important was that that junior high school was really bad in the 80s. Now, I'm not saying it was inner city school US bad, but it was bad for Cape Breton. There was stuff like drugs, and there was stuff like fights. Sometimes the cops would get called to the school, and they didn't want us going there. And ironically, 10 years later or whatever, we both wound up going there. But by then, the school had been cleaned up a lot. It wasn't quite as bad. It still had the bars on the windows, though. The school was called Malcolm Monroe. And then when I got there, it had the nickname Malcatraz because of the bars. And it was an overpopulated school. Like there were more kids at the school than the school could reasonably handle. You could only go one way in the hallways or you get swept away. And this was all crazy to me coming from like a small elementary as I had. So it was just a very stressful time. I eventually came to love it. I really did love the school. But grade 7 was bad. Like I was worried. I didn't know very many people, the French thing. And then it was just this big oppressive place full of hostile people. I was small. And stuff like that. So, I mean, in many ways, I do relate to Don's character, poor Dawn Wiener, which is really putting a hat on a hat, I suppose. But I get it because, you know, it's already bad. If your last name's going to be Wiener, you hope she's like a pretty girl with confidence. And, of course, she's not. She's not that at all.
That's a tough last name, man.
Yeah, it's a tough last name. But if she was like a pretty, I don't know, blonde who was like good at sports or cheerleading, she could pull it off. You know, people could say it.
You know, a jock could probably pull it off too.
And a boy, a jock could pull it off. They could pull it off. They might still hear some, snickers about it, but really, most people aren't going to focus on that. But when you're somebody that's already being made fun of anyway, your name can just really hammer it home. So
that's all it takes for children, man.
Oh yeah, just one thing to seize on.
Yeah, just one. I mean, it's not even a play on words. It is Wiener. You know, it's like you don't even have to do any work to get there.
Yeah, you don't. It's pretty funny.
But yeah, Dawn. So Dawn, she gets bullied in school. Her locker has Wiener Dog and what else do they call her? They have a bunch of nicknames. Lesbo, I think is the big one that the girls call.
I mean, they had some really biting ones too. It says like, "I wish I was beautiful" or something. It's like And I mean, I get it. It's another factor, like one that hasn't changed, whether it's 95, 2015, 2025, 1955, is that people, especially kids, but people will always be judged on their looks.
Sure.
We're more aware of it and we're trying to be more sensitive, but it's still a thing, right? Like we still, even in a more we're in a more body positive age and we try to not body shame people, stuff like that. I mean, it's still a fact that if you're attractive, you're going to have a much easier time in life. And she says something like that regarding her own sister, right? So the movie has a good opening because it opens on just a family album photo. A portrait of them all, right? And they're all smiling like you're supposed to. And she's smiling too. And of course, we find out that's a lie, like a lot of those, right? Smiling happy family is a lie, especially her. And we find out right away she's the main character because slowly as it zooms in on her specifically. So we know she's going to be our main character. And so you see that she's got an older brother who's a bit of a nerd and a younger sister.
The king of the nerds.
Yes, as he's named, but he's handling it pretty well because he's got a laser kind of focus. Social stuff doesn't bother him him very much, right?
He almost has no emotion whatsoever except for like hatred of Dawn.
Yeah, because that's just what everybody has. And in fairness, like his treatment of her is more indifferent than cruel.
Sure.
Which still isn't great from your own brother, but it actually makes him one of the least bad characters in the movie just because he's mostly just sort of, ignoring her or bothered by her, which in most situations is typical of a big brother anyway. But, it's not good when you see that she's suffering so much and going through so much. But the sister, I was going to say, getting back to the looks thing, when like her sister's this little cute blonde thing that flounces around a tutu, and but very quickly, that's what the parents and the mother wanted. They had a daughter, and she did not turn out what they wanted. She was awkward and not good looking and glasses and then they tried again and then they had the one they wanted. So there's your favorite bouncing around the tutu the whole time. And she said something to her only friend, the boy who's a year younger than her, when they're in their little clubhouse. He says it's so easy for her. And I think she says it'll always be easier for her. Like she knows. And that's what I was saying. Like, she's cute and what people want. So she's going to have a much easier time in life, even as she gets older. And so Dawn already understands this.
It's like you said, face the facts. Life's a little easier if you're, a good-looking person.
I mean, they're not even subtle about.
A little easier to you.
I mean, in the bathroom when Lolita's torturing her, she says, "Lolita, like, why do you hate me?" She's just like, "Cause you're ugly." It's like, boom, just says it like flat out, like that. This is the way things are, And so she has to live with that reality.
And so she has resentment towards the little sister because of all this.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's a double whammy, right? I think it's hard enough going to school and being the victim of being bullied and being unpopular and being lonely and isolated. And then you go home and your family doesn't give a shit about you. I mean, I can't relate to that at least. At least I had a family that loved me and cared about me.
Right.
And if I was going through something, I mean, sometimes when you're a kid, you don't want to tell your parents.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I did, they'd be supportive. Like, she had nobody, which is really the real tragedy of the movie. It's bad enough, but you see her family doesn't ever back her. Her father's mostly absent. Doesn't know her, and her mother just clearly favors her sister over her. And again, the brother's just very indifferent to her as he has his laser focus on getting into a good college, which is pretty much all he cares about.
He doesn't. He's like asexual, which is what he's probably 15 maybe at this time. 16.
Yeah. Okay. So he is, because I was going to say, how did you interpret that letter from the girl he dated? Because she says sex, she had a talk with her mother about it, and so like sex is important to experiment with before marriage, but only if there's a serious commitment from both sides. Is that an allusion to her saying? Because again, jumping past that, it does sound like she's hoping they can continue the relationship, right? She's making the effort. She's saying like, "Am I still your girlfriend? Will you right back?"
Your ex-girlfriend? Question mark.
Yeah. And she's even saying, I'm going to get an email and I'll send it to you. So she's willing to try to salvage it. Yeah. Is that whole thing about bringing up sex? Do you think is that what it is? She had wanted to do at least something sexual. He expressed no interest in it.
Yeah.
And then, she just wanted to see where it went from there. So is that what you think happened? Like, yeah, he's basically asexual. Like, she had been like, maybe not wanted to necessarily have sex, but, do some sexual activity. And he had sort of, I rejected her or something like that. So yeah, I figure that's what the point of that, us getting that letter for, because it's a weird thing. The movie's all dawn, and then we just have this one moment of privacy where we get inside his head. It's not his thoughts, but it's him reading the letter. We get the girl Naomi, her voice. So I guess that's the takeaway there, isn't it? Like, he actually had a relationship with a girl, but it seemed like she wanted to do something physical, which he had no interest in, and now he's just letting it. It seems like he's just going to let the relationship die.
Yeah,
like,
that's what it seems like.
It's an interesting insight into him, but like you said, yeah. Plus, it's weird too, like some of the comments he makes about that kind of stuff when she's asking about Steve, right? She becomes infatuated with Steve because he's just like, Steve's horny. He'll just do anything with any girl that's willing. But he's exaggerating because we know there is a limit to that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also funny too, because she says like, "Aren't you interested in dating anybody?" and stuff like that. And he says something like, "None of the girls are that pretty anyway."
Yeah.
It's like, not that the pretty girls are, but just pretty funny to hear coming from somebody like him. It's like, yeah, that's it. They're not up to your standards. That's the issue here. They're not pretty enough for you, dude. It's funny, but yeah, but it's definitely
he's cutting it off before they even have a chance to say no.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Yeah, I get it. Although again, you're like, what does he think is pretty if he is asexual? Like, and at one point, we never know the girl because she's trying to figure out what the line is. Like, what would Steve accept? He's like, this girl. She's just like, yeah, she's not so bad. He's like, she's a dog. That was a big one too.
Which, I mean, it is, Todd Solondz. So I mean, maybe he's gay because he actually plays the same role in Palindromes, I believe.
Right.
I don't remember that part of that movie at all, but maybe he is, gay later on down the line.
Yeah, that could be it.
That may make a little bit more sense.
I hadn't considered
what he's acting here.
Yeah,
because he just cares about getting a good college, right? Everything is all about my college transcript. Even her going to fucking Disney World. Oh, that'll be good for your college transcript. Where? On what planet? Like who?
I know it's interesting too.
Because what vacations have you had?
Yeah, when I was applying for college, like usually I did include my extracurriculars, which included the music I did, but I did not think to include the garage bands I'd been in because I didn't think any college would give a damn that I was in some garage bands. Because what the hell did that prove? And his garage band is terrible. They're a no talent act.
Oh, he plays the clarinet, dude.
They're an interesting thing too. Yeah, the band in its initial form is him on clarinet with a keyboardist and a drummer, which is, I applaud that for being original, but it's not going to get you anywhere. Plus, they suck. Then they do get Steve, who actually has some talent and brings some mainstream appeal to it. Not just that he can sing, but he is a guitarist.
Front man.
Yeah. So as he says, like he's all business about that too. He announces it to the family, like how great this is because this will actually get some exposure for their band. And apparently, it's like, why the hell with the guy like Steve being such a geek band, you find because he's helping him do the computer science stuff, right? It's in payment for that. But and I'll give, if Steve is the songwriter, like I don't know who wrote the songs, but they're original. They don't sound like a 90s garage band, right? Like everything back then sounded basically like what was popular. Everything was sort of grungy or, you know, that kind of, or post-grunge type thing, or maybe kind of like a pop punk thing like the Offspring was doing. That's kind of what all the garage bands I was aware of were kind of doing. They were doing something much different. They sounded almost kind of like a 60s pop kind of band. Like, I was really intrigued by their songs. Not the horrible song that we'll get to later, but They play 2 songs, including the titular "Welcome to the Dollhouse." It's not exactly a good song, but when you think of it as like a band of teenagers writing that song, you're like, wow, that's songwriting that seems to go beyond most teenagers. Yeah. I just thought it was interesting. I was like, did Steve bring this? Like, he's singing it, he's playing the guitar part. Like, I mean, obviously, they're not playing any original songs till Steve show up. Like, the joke is when we're first introduced to the band, they're trying to play, what is it, Satisfaction or something? Or...
I was going to say, and it is, God, awful.
Not at all. It's not at all. I think there's also a joke there, too. It's funny because I played in bands. Like, I don't remember what key a clarinet's in, but I played alto sax, and alto saxes are in different keys. Like, for instance, if I was playing a pianist and we have music, we couldn't swap music because my notes aren't their notes. And he even says, I was playing B flat, that it says here, and he goes, you play an A, or like that. It's like, no, like if somebody on the piano plays a C and I played a C on the sax, they wouldn't sound the same because you have to transpose the music if you're going to do that. So I think that's the joke there, is that they don't realize that the keyboard and the clarinet are not in the same key. So even if they're playing from the same music, that's not going to work. So I think maybe that's the joke there. But yeah, but the whole thing is, this is all about his journey to get into good college. So it's like, I don't know, like I was in enough official, if he plays clarinet, you think, okay, he probably plays in 1 or 2 school bands or something like that, as I did. How important is the garage band really?
Do you think he even cares about the music at all, or is he just concerned about the college, like what this will look like going forward?
I don't think he cares about the music. I think again, it's implied that Steve kind of brings the songs when he comes, and I think he just incorporates that, I think. So it seems to me like Steve sees the band as, okay, he's doing this as a favor, but at least it is a chance to maybe try out his songwriting, because the whole point is Steve is a serious musician who doesn't even want to finish high school, and that's what he does. Spoilers for the full spoilers, is like Steve decides he's just going to drop out and go to New York and just try to make it as a musician. Like, that's his thing, right? You can see, I understand I think that's the 2 reasons Steve would do this. Like, why would Steve be in a band with these freaking talentless nerds? One, okay, he's doing us a favor. This guy's going to help him with the computer science, which he doesn't want to focus on, so he'll do that. And 2, at least this is a chance to, you know, again, try out his singing, try out his guitar playing, try out his songwriting. I think the songwriting is a big one. Maybe I'm overanalyzing, but obviously Steve, it's a small town. There's not many talented people, but Steve is cool. He's talented. He could probably find at least a handful of guys to play in a cooler band with him. But in this band, he probably has full creative control. And I think that's why it might appeal to him too. They're just going to do Steve's song. And it's funny too, like, so when they're going to play the show for the parents' anniversary party, he's like, Steve's demanding $200. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. But then when you hear the song he has to sing, I think Steve was right. You would have to pay me at least $200 to sing that garbage song.
More.
Oh my God. Maybe more. Yeah. More by today's standards. I mean, that is such an embarrassing, and that is a song specifically written by the brother. Is his name Mark?
Right.
Yeah. And it's just his songwriting skill.
Yeah, it's like his gift to his parents, I think.
It's so bad. It's so
Steve leaves the band as soon as he passes his computer science thing. So Steve quits, and then he has to be paid to come back to perform for the anniversary party.
Yeah, and then
then he leaves again. Then he's gone.
He's gone forever. Same as Steve Rogers, which, I mean, I get it. In today's society, everybody knows that's Captain America. In 1995, not everybody knew. I still feel like it probably is that reference, but I mean, it's spelled differently. It's a Rogers, I think, with a D in it or something. But yeah,
it's also a pretty vanilla generic name, you know, for average white guy USA, you know.
Yeah, it's another sort of juxtaposition. They're the Wiener family. no matter what your name is, you're wiener, you're lame. But this is Steve Rogers, which is just a cool name that goes with a handsome, obviously pretty popular guy. So yeah,
no, it would be interesting if he would
compare and contrast.
Maybe pick up on that character if he does any more movies. Like I'd like to see if maybe Steve was successful because he's a talented guy. I mean, he's got a good voice and you know,
I mean, it's a huge risk. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a huge risk being a teenager running off to New York. But I mean, Stranger Things. But it's funny too, and you see the kind of family they are too, because his parents hear about it and they're like, he'll never make it. He's screwed. But and this has sort of been beaten into mark. Like you have to practical. You have to get into a good college to get anywhere. Which isn't exactly wrong, but it's not the only thing. But that's what he's been taught. Like that's the only path, and it is for somebody like him. I mean, he's obviously kind of a nerd and. Academics is his thing and whatever, and he's not a terrible at clarinet. Like once they start playing Steve's songs, he incorporates the clarinet in decently, so that's something. But being decent at clarinet does not get you anywhere in society. I can tell you that. If you're gonna be a clarinet player, you have to be a virtuoso clarinet player, pretty much.
Yeah, there's only so many. Well, I guess Kenny G's alto sax, but similar
soprano sax.
Or soprano sax, okay.
I mean, he could play other saxes, but his signature was the soprano sax, which I always.
It looks like a clarinet, kind of. Sometimes.
It does. It does. It's not shaped like. It's just like a golden clarinet. It's not shaped. I always wanted when I was growing up. I was an alto sax player. I wanted a soprano. I got to play one a couple times.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So on to the parents, just real quick. Like these are like the. Smiles on the outside and then just absolutely miserable people on the inside, it's typical, American family in that regard.
Suburban life.
Yeah. Suburban. Exactly.
Yeah. I can't remember what they say the father's job is, but I assume it's something really boring.
And something white collar pays relatively well.
White collar, boring job.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
I'm going to say accountant.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's definitely an indictment again of sort of the typical American family, which we've seen done in a lot of things, including one of the movies we did on here, American Beauty, stuff like that.
Exactly.
This is a little different though, like because that one's like about showing sort of the darkness underneath. And again, there's darkness in this movie, but I feel like it still has a tone that is comedic. I don't know. It could. I mean, for all the stuff that happens in American Beauty, it ends with somebody getting their head blown off. Like that doesn't happen in this. Even the kidnapping, which is a serious crime, is played off in such a way that it's almost completely harmless.
Yeah. And it's not at all. It was one of the teachers or the coach at school or something?
It was a neighbor.
It was a neighbor, but it was he had built some sort of like rape dungeon like under the school or something. I think it was on his property. I don't know, but yeah. Okay.
But again, they play it off kind of funny because it plays into the and like I said, like it's not like it will be good, for Dawn to have her sister go through something horrible. But also you have to think like this is typical. Her sister does get kidnapped and suffers no ill effects from it whatsoever.
Right.
It's not even like let's imagine a real kidnapping where a small kid gets kidnapped and is put down in this place to be filmed and stuff, and they are recovered before. And it's the same thing in the movie.
Before any
abuse or molestation takes place, right? Still, that would be a harrowing experience for most kids. In this, it's clearly stated that it's not. That she actually kind of enjoyed it. She enjoyed the attention. She enjoyed that she had her own TV and stuff like that. And now she enjoys. And now she really enjoys the attention of the media covering it. And that's like. Probably the most. I mean, we're at the climax of the movie, right? Like sort of the lowest point for Dawn. Dawn, who'd risked her life out of guilt because she was inadvertently responsible for kidnapping.
Well, she was directly responsible. She didn't give her the note on purpose.
Right. Well, but she didn't know this could happen. She didn't know this would happen. But anyway, out of guilt, goes to New York City alone, dangerous as hell. And her in the meantime, her sister is rescued, and her parents don't care at all that she's missing. No. And all Mark talks about is she's getting in trouble. So they're on TV, like laughing and talking about how great it is and everything. And meanwhile, it's like she doesn't even know or care where her daughter is. It's like your 13-year-old daughter's on the streets of New York alone. She spent the night alone on the streets. Like, doesn't care. she's got the one she cares about. Like, so I feel it makes sense. That's the lowest point of the movie because it's right towards the end, right? It's just like, it's like, like how much worse can things get for poor Dawn? Like, and this is because
Dawn's a very sympathetic character in this movie, but there is one time where she contemplates hitting her sister with a hammer.
And even that seems like, seems like if you read about it, it sounds really dark. But the way the movie does it, it's not that dark because she doesn't come very close. And the way she sighs, it basically indicates like, I was never going to be able to do that. You know, you can have a dark scene in a movie where a sister stands over her with a hammer, ultimately doesn't do it, but you feel the darkness. Like, this is not that. She comes into the room with a hammer. She does even raise it, but she's not close. And just the way she sighs, it's like, who am I kidding? Like, I could never do this. Like, I don't think for a second, despite the fact that Dawn's been dumped on throughout the entire movie, I don't think anybody watching it for the first time really thinks Dawn is serious. I didn't, and it doesn't come out that way.
I was going to say, this is probably my third or fourth time to watch this movie, and I was like, she's going to do it, you know, but you can tell, I mean, she's thinking about it. Those gears.
I never took it seriously.
Man. Yeah.
I never took it seriously. I felt like, well, she has a sort of resigned sigh, like who am I kidding?
She's already pissed off because she had just bashed the VHS recording of her falling in a pool from the anniversary party. So she's already pissed off about that. That's why she has the hammer in her hand.
That's where it comes from. There's a whole thing of her getting pushed in the pool. Like, nothing like having your whole family come together to laugh at you. They're all bonding and laughing. Look, there she is getting pushed in the pool, our eternally dumped on daughter. But yeah, and I mean, Dawn isn't perfect, but you can't blame her for her mistakes. Like, for instance, like when she lashes out at the boy, right? She has that friend. Her only friend is that boy. Yeah. And she like yells at him. I think even calls him a faggot at one point because she's so upset after what happened with Steve's rejection. And it's not good to lash out at the only person that's sympathetic to you, but that's what happened early on in the movie too, right? Because this really gives you an indication how the movie is. The movie starts with her being bullied, and then she gets more bullied, and then she comes across a boy in the hallway getting bullied. She stands up for him, and then he yells at her and calls her like lesbo and screams at her to leave her alone. He's like, "Leave me alone, wiener dog," or something like that. Kicks off. So it's like, oh, okay. We're going for a real reality here, like, because it's like, they can bond because they were both picked on, they're both victims, they're both unpopular, and here she is doing the right thing. She's standing up for him, and he does not appreciate it. It's just like, get away from me, because she's even less popular than him. So,
it's realistic because she's doing the same thing to him, what they do to her. Yeah. But it's like all she knows, right? And in this world, all she knows is this type of activity. So she's, I guess, trying to get some sort of power out of doing that to him.
Yeah. It's all she knows. And again, it's so sad that it starts in the home because you have the incident where, the main bully is shooting the spitballs at her during the thing. And she shoots it back and hit Brandon. She hits the teacher in the eye. So then it comes to her and her parents getting called in. And she's in the principal's office. And, she's trying to explain herself. She says, I was fighting back. And I think the most telling line in the entire movie is her mother who said, who taught you to fight back? Which really shows her parenting style, which is you are here to be dumped on and to take it and take it and take it. Never stand up for yourself. Never fight back. You are worthless. You are garbage. I mean, that's really what her mother has instilled in her daughter. Like, what made you think you should fight back? You have no right to fight back.
This movie, that one sentence is this entire movie. Yeah.
Whoever told you to fight back? And I mean, it reinforced it in Dawn. It's like even fighting back doesn't work.
It's like, look at my fucking hair. I have 50 spitballs in my hair back here. Come on, dude. Like, and I'm the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's hard to say what I would do in the same situation because in the same situation, I have to understand that it would be different. I would be more dumped on than I was. I wasn't popular, but I knew bullying and stuff like that. But usually it was more isolated incidents. I was never, specifically targeted. I never had too much repeat business. I had bullying incidents in my life, but I was lucky enough that I was either not interesting enough or not a doormat enough for like bullies to really, or not weird enough really for bullies to waste their time focus on me. The fact that I usually did fight back made them realize I wasn't worth their time. Because I would fight back verbally or physically if pushed far enough. And like most bullies, it's not like they couldn't kick the shit out of me, but most of them don't want that hassle either. And they move on to somebody who is more passive. But so I feel like, it's hard to relate to her in that instance, but at the same time, I had to put myself more in a situation where like, this is constant, you know, like how hopeless you would feel when this is constant. And I mean,
this
getting
is
really serious here.
School shooters, you know?
Yeah. Or people kill themselves, right?
Kill themselves. Exactly. Yeah. But at this age, like, I mean, if you back an animal into a corner, they're going to lash out, you know? And
I mean, again, the tragedy of it is you are taught by the adults in your life, if there's a problem, you come to an adult. And here she finds the adults do not have her back. Do not take her side.
Not only,
they'll even punish her for coming to them in the first place, for like wasting their time or like that. So it's just so tragic and awful, but it's real.
Write me a 100-page essay about dignity.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous.
So yeah. So Dawn is what's sometimes known as a pinball protagonist, which basically means she bounces around but doesn't have any control over anything. It just means, unlike some protagonists in stories, she's not driving the action. Her choices and the things she does don't have any effect. She's dragged along by what other forces and other people do. She has no power. She's a kid, and she's not a popular kid, and she's not even, cared for by her own family. So that's where that sort of term comes from when you have a pinball protagonist, is they're basically powerless. They're dragged along from event to event. And at times she does try to affect change and do things, and almost always backfires. She becomes infatuated with Steve, which of course leads to him just sort of not even really rejecting her, because he's so beneath him, like beneath his notice. Like he doesn't actively reject her. He doesn't even understand what the hell she's doing when he's talking to her and stuff like that, right? And the ultimate rejection comes when she thinks she's going to like bare her soul to him at the party after he's played the thing, and he sees like he's in the, I don't know what the house is, but he's in that place making out with the girl, who is quite attractive. So it shows like, Steve doesn't need to scrape the bottom of the barrel as her brother was suggesting.
Right.
But
well, he's probably jealous in some regard, you know.
Well, that's what he says. Like, Steve's just horny. He doesn't care. Any girl that's willing, blah, blah, blah. And there's another moment of like, again, I get it how some people don't like this kind of humor, but I like that innocence. So anyway, so he tells her about the girl that she kind of knew that had done something with Steve. The rumor was they'd actually gone all the way, right? So she tracks her down, and she's like making out with some guy. And she actually does talk to him about it. It's like, what did you hear about me and Steve? And she clarifies that, like, no, they didn't go all the way. And she says, we finger fucked, right? And I don't want to get too much on this, but that makes it sound like it's a two-way thing. Like, I know what fingering is. Fingering is. What I want to know is, when she's saying finger fuck, does she mean her fingers were in play too? Is that what it means? Or is she just mean so? Okay, so we were both doing finger stuff. Okay. It's a try. I'm just saying I understood what fingering was when I grew up. I never heard finger fuck. So that's kind of like both. Both parties have their fingers engaged. Very interesting. But anyway, you can tell that like she knows what intercourse is, but finger fucking is new to her too. And she's standing in the bathroom looking in the mirror, and she's looking at her fingers. I love that moment because it's clear she is trying to figure out what finger fucking is. And would she do it? I really think that's what's going on in the scene. I really love that. Because, like, I don't think she knows what it is. She's trying to think, what is it? Is it something I could do? Is it something I would do? And then, of course, she gets interrupted by her annoying sister. But I really like that moment. Because I can remember that kind of confusion, too.
Sure.
I remember being in grade 8, so I was 13, and somebody mentioning 69 to me, and I had no idea what that was. And then when they told me, I didn't even believe them. I had to, go find some other stuff out to clarify, to make sure that this was correct information. And I was like, wow. I was really impressed. I was like, Dad is, wow, yeah. Wow, I didn't think of that on my own. Wow. But at the time I was kind of like the number, I get it. Like, I thought, I was just like, that's kind of like a weak connection, isn't it? But no, it was a real thing. Yeah. But yeah, I can just remember, it's not like I was innocent. It was just like, there was still stuff I didn't know. I can still remember that moment. And I do remember actually the first time I heard about fingering, I was in grade 6, so it was just before that. I was on a rep hockey team, and I had this annoying kid that I was paired on defense with. Eventually, I think he left the team. He wasn't even that good. I remember just once he's just one of those kids that wants attention. He might have been lying, he might have been telling the truth, but I just remember once he asked me if I kissed anybody, And I said, no, I've never kissed anybody. Huh, you ever kissed a girl? He's like, I fingered a girl before. You know what that means? And I didn't, but I said I did. And then I didn't believe him. And I have no idea if he's telling the truth or not. Because
guarantee you he was lying.
Probably, yeah. He didn't seem like the smooth type that could get somebody that, I don't know. But anyway, I did give it serious thought for a while. His last name, by the way, was Dix.
That's another good one. It's right there.
But what's funny about that is I don't remember exact circumstances, but one of his parents like remarried, and then his last name was Mercer. So he kind of got like a do-over on that. And then he disappeared. So I don't know. But his name was Sean. He was Sean Dix, Dicks. But at some point went by Mercer. But anyway, he disappeared. But yes, I remember that conversation really well. But kids like that too, because I was not talking to him. We were not friends. We were on the team, but we were not friends. We did have to play together, but I didn't really like playing with him. And later in the year, I got to play with the person I wanted to play with, but who was actually this is pointless, but my family doctor's son, who was a year younger than me. He was my defense partner for most of the year. But anyway, before him, I had Sean, and I did not talk to Sean or like Sean, but he just sat next to me and started babbling and asking me if I kissed anybody. And I was honest. I said I had not kissed anybody. Yeah. And he laughed at me and made fun of me and then said like that he'd fingered a girl. And I don't know if I knew what that meant at the time, but I found out later and I did not believe him. And I don't believe him today. He probably did at some point in his life, but he didn't back then.
Yeah. It
but I remember these types of conversations. I remember that with a lot of clarity. I remember that very well. I remember where we were. We ran an away game in North Sydney in the dressing room. I remember it very clearly.
At that age, I got a lot of misinformation. So,
and that was the other thing too. Like I was aware that there was misinformation. Even then, I was aware of the misinformation. Like a lot of people like back then, like I think you mostly believe it. Like I had reason not to. I don't know why, but yeah, I was aware that some of the stuff I was hearing wasn't true, and not just about like whether they'd done it or not, which is a whole thing. People bragging that they did this or that, but just like about how certain things worked. I mean, like the first time somebody like a kid said what sex was to me, all he said was it's like when a guy gets on top of a girl. And I was like, there's got to be more to it than that, but.
Well, I mean, we're talking about the days before, the internet was as accessible as it is now.
Right.
Now these kids can, three clicks, they can figure out what they're, what they need to know.
Yeah. I mean, my first sex ed class, I was like 11. So I knew some stuff.
That's probably about the same for me.
From it. But the whole thing is like, they teach you reproduction. They don't teach you teach you about cunnilingus.
I don't teach you the good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that is the stuff you're filling in. It's like, okay, we get intercourse. But then there's all this other stuff and it all has nicknames and different terms for it and stuff like that. And that's the thing, right? You're trying to sort out what of that is real. Is that something people really do? Is that something people really call it? Stuff like that. Like I remember sifting through all that. Like, I'm not going to go on to a thing, but Jay knows I'm very sensitive about words even today. And there are certain terms that I still don't like. And like, if I was intimate with a person, like I was dating, like if they use certain terms, I'd be like, can we use a different term? It's not, I'm offended. I'm not offended by it. I have triggers for things that I find appealing and things that I find unappealing. And some of those words, like I don't like cunt, I'll use cunt to like insult somebody, but I'm not going to use it in a sexy situation.
Oh, show me your client.
And I don't like girls that do, but I will never, whatever person's like dirty talk is, no judgment, because nobody sounds smart or cool when they do it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
stupid. Yeah.
Everybody sounds stupid, right? Like, 'cause I'm not going to say, oh, the way I do it is so great. Like, no, I'm sure it's embarrassing. I just mean I get more hung up on words than some people. Like some people, they don't really care, if they say this or that. They're not care. They're focused on the physical, the moment. They're having sex, so that's the good thing. They don't really care. Yeah. But I actually have always been a word-focused person. Like the same thing, like with eating. Like I need certain words when I'm eating not to be mentioned, or I can't eat. Things like that. So I'm very sensitive to that. So I'm really sensitive to that sort of thing. So I can just remember, what it was like, not only just sifting through this information as a kid, but also being like, that sounds terrible. Like, that's supposed to be a good thing? That doesn't sound good.
Well, 69 was like huge when we were coming up, just because, I don't know, I guess it was a newer term.
Sure.
And I was like, oh man, that sounds so cool. I'm going to do that. I was
Yeah.
like obsessed with doing that.
Yeah, I thought it sounded really cool.
It sounds a lot better on paper than it does actually doing it. It's
Well, I mean, it depends. I think also like sizes matter, like
Sure.
heights help with that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing. If one partner is much taller than the other, it makes a lot of things hard to do.
yeah.
Even just like intercourse, bang bang, you know, stuff like that. Like you want to do it standing up, and somebody's, you know, you're way taller than them. You know, you'll have to make adjustments there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, there were definitely some sexual terms that I did learn way too early, because some of them there's just never a good time to learn them anyway. I remember being like only like 14 and hearing what like snowballing was. It's like I didn't need to hear that now, so I definitely didn't need to hear it at 14. You know, I'm 14. I've done pretty much nothing, and I'm like, okay,
Right.
okay, we've reached a realm that I can't fathom.
Yeah, it's out of my league.
Yeah, but it's all out there. But yeah, I just really remember clearly having those sorts of conversations with people. Sometimes it was better, like if you had your friends, you knew you could trust your friends, so you could have like an earnest discussion about what they knew or what they thought they knew. But a lot of it, like I said, a lot of this first came from people I wasn't friends with or didn't even necessarily like. Sometimes they were just idiots like Sean Dix that wanted to like blab or brag or lie, you know, forcing this information on me, you know. So yeah, that all comes from that scene where I think she's been told, like the girl says finger fuck. She doesn't want to ask the girl because that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to look like you don't know.
Right.
You never want to look like
you don't know?
Yeah, you don't want to do that, right? So she just like makes it seem like she understands. But I just really like the next scene, cut to her in the bathroom, looking in the mirror and looking at her fingers, like trying to fathom what that is and taking herself through it. I think that's some really good filmmaking and how it's shot, and of course how the acting of the girl. Like I don't know what her direction was. Maybe she probably didn't need to be filled on in everything. She was maybe just told to sort of look at her fingers in a quizzical way and look in the mirror. You don't need to give her all that information.
Right.
But it's really effective. I really like it. It does remind me of being that age and being uncertain about a lot of that stuff because I didn't have experience with it, right?
And if she is a lesbo, like they call her, like she should probably know what that means, you know, because
Right.
you got a few tools in your bag there, and that's one of them.
For sure. And that's the other thing too. Like, her retort, of course, is like she's not a lesbo, and I mean that's the truth. If nowadays, like, again, I don't know, like people would be like, "You think that's an insult?" And that's kind of what I always thought was kind of funny. Like, people called me faggot before I even knew if they were trying to say I was gay or not. By the time I realized they were trying to say I was gay, I was like, okay, you know. And that was another reason I think, again, why I think I didn't get a lot of repeat business. You couldn't, a lot of guys, even if. And not just being picked on, but let's say it's a fight. It's two guys, like, I don't know, you know, he's picking on, you know, he really wants to insult him. We'll call him a fag, and, you know, that's his berserk button. You're not going to let him get away with that. But I didn't care. I was just like, so you're just saying I'm gay? And, okay, like, I'm not, but I don't care if I you know.
Well,
like,
they're doing it to get a rise out of you. If you don't respond, then they're not getting what they want out of the situation, so they're going to move on. Yeah.
I don't pretend to be so mature and enlightened, but I certainly was when it came to that. It did not get a rise out of me, and I did not care. And I had friends where it would still really bother them if they were told. And I didn't try to tell them they shouldn't. But I was just like, I just don't really get how saying someone is gay is an insult, especially if they're not. It's like, you kind of know that I'm not. But if I was, you know, I was already too mature for that in a way. I'm not saying I was mature. In many ways, I was immature. But now I was quite mature in that, like, I just skipped over it. I didn't see why there was any sort of thing to be said about it, you know. But it was the big thing. It was really the big thing for guys. Girls, you know, they saw her calling her a lesbo, and girls did do that. But girls had other avenues, too. And that wasn't always the ultimate one, either. That was a fun one for them. But girls have other avenues they might use. They might just say, you dress like crap. That's enough for girls, right?
Yeah.
That can be a really, really insulting thing to say, or supposed to be. That's the intent.
I think a lot of guys have that word still like front loaded, ready to drop at any time because it's fighting words, right? You know, you call somebody that, you know, we're going to fisticuffs. So I think they've just got it ready to drop at all times.
Right. And I mean, there's always that thing about, this is in movies and in real life, about like how somebody who is supposedly maybe a good guy or good character, how far you push them before you get to I don't know. Okay, this might be unrelated, but this is something I thought of. This is one of the reasons I've never liked the movie Do the Right Thing. The Spike Lee movie Do the Right Thing. And Do the Right Thing is all about racial tension, of course, right? And it all sort of erupts. But one of the things is, like, it takes place in that pizza place run by the Italian guy. And they have racial tension to begin with, because they're just like, how come you don't have black guys up on the wall? He's like, it's my place. I'll have Italians on the wall. You know, but eventually it gets to a thing where the guy is really pushing him. Anyway, I didn't like the message that it seemed to be, that Spike Lee seemed to be seeing, which was like, you know, this white guy can seem tolerant and cool, but if you push him far enough, eventually he's going to call you the N-word. Because I don't think that's true. Because I don't think most people are like that. No matter how mad you got them, doesn't mean I will default to the racial slur, because I'm not racist. But that's how I felt. I felt like watching that movie, he was saying, you know, get them mad enough and the racism comes out. And I don't think that's true. I think that's true, yeah, if they are racist. But I don't think anger turns non-racist people racist. If they say something racist, because they were racist to begin with. And that's, you know, the whole thing. And I kind of feel the same way about sometimes when you, like, how she, I think, eventually uses the word faggot herself, lashing out. But again, it's not because she meant it. It's not because she meant it. It's because she was heard and it was a thing. It's not really who she is. But it's a harder argument to make if she had, again, said, like, say, a racial slur or something like that. That's a harder argument. So I don't know.
It's all intended to dig. It's all intended to hurt someone. That's the only reason that you use terms like that. You know,
right.
Derogatory at someone.
Right.
So it's.
I mean, that's sort of the argument you have, like, about, like, Roseanne Barr saying, like, I'm not racist. I was on drugs or pills. And a lot of people are like, well, that's not a good enough excuse. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Race is just such a touchy subject these days.
It is touchy, but I mean,
there's really there's no right or wrong. You know, I mean, it's not a two-way street, and it's just I don't know.
I just didn't like that. What I thought was an implied message in that particular movie, because he seemed to be suggesting, well, all white people are racist.
So that was the point. All white people are racist.
Well, that's how it feels if you watch that movie to me. It seems to be like, well, all white people are racist. Some are nicer than others. But if you get even a nice one mad enough, he'll eventually revert to racism. That seems to be, that's kind of how I felt. Maybe I'm missing the movie message. Because the whole point was that guy, the pizza guy, well, he's a bit of a gruff guy and he says some not PC stuff. The whole idea is like he gets along with the black characters and he likes them. But then the movie, you know, the N-word. And it seems to suggest, oh, well, you know, you made him super mad. So he, you know, deep down, all white people will do this if you get them mad enough. That's kind of how it felt. Now, that's maybe too much of a blanket statement. I'm just saying, I don't know. If that's not the statement, you're just saying, oh, this guy we thought was actually pretty cool was just actually a racist guy all along. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know race is not in this movie. I'm just saying it is interesting how sometimes when a character yells like some sort of slur, especially if it's supposed to be a sympathetic character, like how we're supposed to take it. Right. It's like, oh, are we going to abandon them now? Or are we on their side? Because like I said, if she was using the word, yeah, she's lashing out because she's hurt. She doesn't really mean it. Doesn't excuse it exactly, but I mean, man, she's talking about same thing. Like speaking of we'll just take slurs out of it and just go to behavior. So Brandon is a horrible bully. And you do find out there are reasons for it, but again, I don't think excuses it. Like Brandon doesn't like people saying retard or retarded because his brother actually has mental issues, which makes a lot of sense. His father seems to be like, you know, a very gruff alcoholic type.
That's what I was going to say. It's directly based on his home life. Yeah. Right.
So you do get it. But again, you can say, well, a kid could also have that and still not do those things. So I don't know. So Brandon's like halfway sympathetic. Like he can't be all the way sympathetic. He's still making these choices.
You got this kid that gets his ass beat by his dad all the time, and he goes to school and does the same thing his dad does to him at home. He does that to the kids at school. Sure. You know, so it's textbook, bully.
Yeah.
And his brother's retarded or whatever. So,
And he adds the other layer to it too, because it doesn't happen as much. It does happen where boys specifically bully girls, right? And he almost sort of realizes like he needs another angle. Like he can't just say, I'm going to kick the shit out of you. So he's like, I'm going to rape you, right? That becomes the whole thing where he's like threatening to rape her. And again, I get it. That sounds awful, and it is awful. But the movie does kind of play it for laughs in a way, which I do get. I especially like the part like after they had that first discussion, and he's like, "What time do you have to be home for?" 4:30. And she's like, "So were you going to rape me?" And he's like, "No, there isn't time." It's like, if I was going to do this, I want to do it. I want to do it properly. You know,
they're interchanging having sex with the word rape, and it's just like, it's like, these kids will like kind of bully girls that they like, kind of like a flirting type way. He's kind of doing that, just more elevated type deal, I think.
And it is interesting too, because I kind of misunderstood the first time I watched it, because I thought, well, it makes sense in a way because there's, he's not popular with girls, and you
Obviously,
think, oh. It is a target, like, but he has like the same bouncing hormones that we all had, and he sees her. This is a girl I could like. She's not pretty or anything, but I could kiss her, and she's not going to like resist or push off or tell anybody. Right. But at the same time, you find out Lolita's into him, so there is something about her that he really does actually like. It's not explained really, which is I guess is fine, because it's not like she's the only girl he could like kiss. Because it seems like Lolita is even protective of him. We see two things. Like at first, when she's in the bathroom, she says that whole thing about like it was a Brandon. She's like, "Yeah, you're always right, and Brandon's always guilty. You stay away from me. He's mine." And there's a part later where she's like trying to like touch Brandon. He's like pushes her off. So it's like there is something about Dawn that does appeal to Brandon, despite her being so unattractive and all this stuff. Like there is something genuine, which is where you get that little spark of just at least a spark of sympathy for him or empathy. So he also runs away, and we don't know what happens to him. Although I think that does happen. He does get picked up in one of the other movies, I think.
Yeah.
So does Steve, maybe.
He went on to go and he was on the L Word, I believe, for a while. The guy that played Brandon.
Right, because Palindromes and Wiener Dogs are both sort of sequels that continue some of these characters, although sometimes they contradict each other, so I don't really know.
Palindrome is a weird one because it has multiple people playing the same role, even like interchanging sex. You'll have men playing female roles and vice versa. It's it's well done.
Sounds confusing.
Yeah, it's interesting though. It's his style, so you would like it. But back to Brandon real quick. He does like I believe her name is Cookie, and she's like a popular girl. Yeah. She's throwing the party, right? And then he's not invited to the party, and she tells him that there needed to be an even number of boys and girls, and if they invited him, there wouldn't,
Yeah.
And then he gives.
He's at least trying to be tactful.
He gives her his dessert from lunch, which is a big gesture, I guess, in his eyes. But she's kind of like, "You didn't pay anything for that. This didn't cost you anything." So that it was,
which is really how a lot of kids view things. I was saying that was the big switch from elementary to junior high. Was suddenly everybody cared about money, who had money, who spent money, how much things cost. Brand name clothing becomes an important thing.
Oh man, that
even in elementary, you don't want to be like the poor kid, but it gets so much worse in like junior high.
That started in kindergarten for me, man. It was like if you wear these shoes, like you're not cool. You got to have these, and it was horrible. Because now like Champion is a popular brand for kids to wear these days. Like it's gotten expensive, but when I was growing up, Champion was like sold at like Kmart and shit. It was like cheaper clothing. Like I wore a lot of it, but it wasn't like
interesting.
Designer. Like it's probably considered now. Maybe not designer, but upper end clothing.
No, I wasn't aware of that. I never thought about how some brands could evolve or become more in fashion. I remember I was a little concerned with it. I was a little concerned with it in junior high. I can remember I was like, kids were like wearing Mondetta shirts, and I remember like saying like I would like to get Mondetta shirts too, and I got a couple. Like my parents seemed to think that was reasonable. They weren't going to go give me a big speech about conformity or I don't know, anything like that. They were like, I guess so. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I never needed them to really tell me that you don't necessarily have to always have the most expensive thing, because the truth was, I did have other interests in things I thought were more interesting than clothes, and I realized there was a finite amount of money, and I had to make decisions about how that would be spent. And I cared more about, I guess, what back then would be considered my nerdy, geeky stuff than that kind of stuff. So it's like video games, toys.
I cared entirely too much what other people thought of me, and that's really something I regret, because as you turn into an adult, you realize how little that kind of shit matters.
Right.
Grand scheme of things, like what my T-shirt says, like that's a thing, but that's kids.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I ever came to my parents and said, I need this and I need to fit in. Like, I was never that transparent. Even if maybe that was what I was thinking, I could play it off better than that. But again, I wasn't that affected either, like I said, because I wasn't that impressed by designer clothes and things anyway. Like, even if other kids were, I was like, a shirt's a shirt. That's sort of how I felt about it. I wanted clothes that I looked, I cared about how I looked, but I didn't base that on what other people thought. Because, I mean, honestly, my sense of style was stupid. In junior high, and I mean, it was kind of a 90s thing, but like in junior high and high school, I wore shirts that were way too big for me and jeans that were pretty baggy. And like, by the time I was in university,
style, at one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I remember like almost having like a nervous breakdown when I was in kindergarten over what I was going to wear to school. It's fucking wild, man. Yeah. Just because.
No, I mean, it was pretty cool in elementary. Like, I really didn't think about it. I mean, obviously,
like if you wore a certain type of sneaker that maybe wasn't very expensive, because not everybody has the money to buy $100 sneakers.
Yeah.
You would get made fun of, and that's just how it was.
I'm sure that happened when I was in elementary, but I was less aware of it. Because I definitely didn't have those things. I remember not thinking about my clothes at all in elementary. I always wore like sweatpants and a t-shirt. I didn't even wear jeans till I got to junior high.
I mean, it definitely hasn't gone away. Like, you see tons of like TikToks of these girls that are just like, their whole TikTok channel is, this is my outfit I'm wearing. My bracelet is this. My purse is this.
Yeah.
My dress, my shoes, my whatever.
Oh, yeah, it's just gotten worse and worse. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, my God, does it matter?
It matters a lot to some people. Yeah. And it's big money. I mean, being a boy makes it a little not quite as bad. At least we got to live up. I mean, people, like you said, people would still definitely come down on you for what you wore, but it wasn't as hyper intense as it could be in girl world.
Yep, it hasn't changed. My kids are the same way. They're 13 and 14, so they're going through the same shit that we did.
Yeah.
But girls are mean, man. Girls are meaner than boys are. Boys will just like punch you in the face, and then, that's it. Girls will,
Girls are much more calculating.
Yes, exactly. They're more of like an emotional thing.
They will develop a long-term plan to destroy someone.
Yes. Yes.
And they will coordinate and work on it. And I don't know where that comes from, and it's scary.
They get caught at an early age.
I mean, does it ever completely go away? That's what I wonder.
That's a good question. I would say for some people, no.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I remember not liking people, but my whole thing with people I didn't like was to just avoid them.
Yeah.
That was about it. I didn't like that person. I would do my best to not be around them. And that was about it. Limit my contact with them, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I stopped caring when I got a little bit older into high school and stuff. Just like I embraced, that I was a sci-fi nerd and stuff like that. So
yeah, grade 10 when I got to high school was interesting socially because I'd spent 3 years away. As I said, I went to a different junior high. I chose to come back into the fold of my high school. So all the friends I'd made in junior high were going to a different high school. I did not continue on to Riverview. I went to Sydney Academy because I wanted to, and I was reunited with people like Ryan, but people plus all sorts of people that I had never been to school with before that were coming from other areas and stuff like that. So like grade 10 was like grade 9, grade 10. I enjoyed both years, but they were ridiculously different. Grade 9, I was, I don't think I was popular, but I had built up a good group of friends by grade 9. I really liked school. I liked my friends. I was in band with a lot of them, stuff like that. And then suddenly in grade 10, not one of them was in high school with me. But it's not like I didn't know people at the high school. They were just some of the people I hadn't seen since elementary, or I'd seen in passing places. And then there were people like Ryan, a few of my other friends that I always still hung out with. They were there, but some of them I had never been in a school with them. It was kind of weird. Like a few of my friends, like I'd met through hockey and stuff like that, but I'd never gone to school with them. So it was weird to be at school with them because I didn't really know how they behave. And yeah, grade 10 was when I kind of realized that I was very malleable. I was like a click jumper type person because I just hung out with people in all sorts of different groups.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, I think that's how normal people are in society, right?
Yeah. So I think in a way it was sort of teaching me a pretty good lesson about being sociable in a way.
Absolutely.
And like there were definitely groups I wasn't a part of, but I was definitely in part of way more social circles than the average person. So that's all I would say. I was not popular in high school. No one was popular. If I had run for president, nobody would have fucking voted me. Nothing. But I was well liked. So there were people who knew me and they liked me, and that was good enough. Like the whole big thing was like, where do we eat lunch, right? I could have eaten lunch in 5 or 6, maybe even more different places.
Yeah.
In high school with different groups of people. And that started to estrange me from Ryan and sort of my core group of friends because they got mixed up with the popular people and started to care more about that kind of stuff. One of them more or less became another friend named Ryan, different Ryan. He sort of became obsessed with being in that, and he sort of became that. And we got sort of estranged for that because it became all about those sorts of things, appearances, looking good and wearing the right clothes. And of course, getting drunk was a big thing and stuff like that. And so by the time I got to grade 12, it's funny, that was my last year of school. That's the most isolated I ever was grade 12. My graduating year, I drifted so much from my friends because I just wasn't into the stuff they're doing. I still saw them and talked to them and stuff, but I did not hang out the way I used to at all. And it's kind of my fault in a way. So eventually they just sort of stopped calling me, which is partially my fault at least. And so yeah, grade 12 was it's weird. It was my last year of public school. It was my loneliest by far. I just wanted to get through it and get out.
Yeah.
Nobody was picking on me, no bullies, nothing like that. I just felt invisible, you know. I thought I was doing the right things in grade 10 and 11, but the problem was I didn't have any sort of strong friendships anymore. You know, people like tolerated my presence, but like they didn't really want anything else. And that's something that happened to me again. I mean, I did really well with friends in university, but as an adult, I mean, people always say it's so hard to make friends as an adult. Like, I feel like I make no impact on people. I feel like I'm not socially awkward. I can come across normal and even charming and witty to people, but it doesn't seem to make enough of an impact because they never want to like go out for coffee or anything. So it's become very difficult. So I think about that grade 12 year a lot because I feel like I'm almost in the same place. I mean, it's different because I don't have a school to go to every day, but there's sort of that sort of same loneliness and isolation. This movie, the loneliness and isolation is prepped up more on being like actually specifically targeted, right? Like, yeah, she's an afterthought to her family, but she's actually like being sought out and specifically picked on at school, which is even worse.
Well, it's almost like everyone in this movie in Dawn's life is a shitty person, you know?
Yeah.
In some regard, you know, and even she is, you know, she's not, you know, unscathed either.
No, but again, you see, it's sort of what she became. She
Right.
probably had good intentions.
Yeah,
as I said, her lashing out at her only friend, like it's sad to see, and it's a bad thing for her to do. But you understand how she was just sort of driven to it.
Yeah,
and plus that shift that happens when she becomes infatuated with Steve, which does happen to a lot of people. And I'm not going to bore people anymore with personal stories, but I mean, another big part of growing up for me was definitely having crushes on girls that did not like me.
Yeah, we can all relate to that.
I think so. But yeah, that's sort of the shift in the movie. Because I think, you know, she sort of understood I'm not going to be popular. I'm not even going to have friends. And she sort of resigned to it. But then the way she feels about Steve is so powerful that she's willing to, like, put herself out there and risk, which we all know as the audience. It's like, this isn't going to go well. You know, we already know that more pain and embarrassment is coming from this.
Yeah,
and
it's
then,
like you
Steve
said,
is actually kind of nice to her when they talk, but again, he's like 17, she's 13, and
she's not even on
his
his radar as far as wanting to have sex with him. Like he doesn't even get that. So
he doesn't even get that she has a crush on him or anything like that. She just thinks it. So yeah, and then like the final brush off again is like him. It's not like a rejection. It's like she gets cold feet when she sees the girl, realizing it's going to happen. So she covers it by saying, "Do you want to be in the club, the special people's club?" It's like, special people. Your club's for retards, and closes the door. It's like, exit Steve. Great.
Which Steve was not necessarily a bad person to her before then, but
Well, I mean, he's revealed to be like a fairly shallow person and a fairly self-absorbed person.
Sure.
So, which in this movie isn't that bad compared to other people. It's funny, like in a lot of movies, the shallow, self-absorbed person, that's the bad person. But this movie, everybody's bad. So it's a sliding scale. It's like he's not so bad, really, because at least he's not going out of his way to make her life shitty. When he's hurting her and upsetting her, it's by accident. He's oblivious. He's not trying to do it. It's like he's still kind of an asshole in some ways, but it's just like he's not nearly as bad as some of these other people.
Exactly. It's bad when he's one of the better characters in the movie.
Yeah.
The more likable characters.
Yeah, exactly.
But they keep calling her Lesbo, and Heather Matarazzo. I'm sure I'm butchering that, but she's actually a lesbian now, and she said that during this movie she didn't know what that term meant, so she looked it up and she's like, "Oh shit, that's me."
Huh.
So
that's interesting.
It's kind of funny how that works.
We all have our own journey when it comes to that sort of thing, I guess. It's less straightforward when you're not straight. Haha. For use of that, because straight's supposed to be at least growing up, that was the normal thing. It was the normal path. So like, it's not like I needed revelations to discover I was straight or close enough or anything like that, right? But yeah, that's what it for a lot of people, even today, but especially back then. Yeah, a lot of people growing up, if they're actually gay, it's like, because that's not supposed to be normal, they maybe need some sort of event or revelation to make them realize it.
Well, yeah, they're taught something's wrong with them,
right? Because they're told, straight's it's like straight's the default. Yeah. Like that's the default setting, and there's something wrong. Yeah, I mean, again, it's much better now.
You're going to grow up and get married and have children. That's the normal path of the way things go. But, it's gotten a little better now, I think.
Yeah, things are getting better. As I said, like, I'm glad that things like school, I mean, there's always going to be bullying. There's always going to be people picking on people and judging and stuff like that. And things will, but I mean, it is better. But as I said, it's funny, like, that you can never have a perfect balance. Because, like, I was serious, like, I would not want to be a teacher. Because I feel like, you say the wrong thing to the wrong kid. And I don't mean the wrong thing like a wildly inappropriate or really mean thing. I just mean, you say a completely reasonable thing to the wrong kid and it still blows up in your face. You'll get some kid that takes it some way, or even if they don't, they know they can get you in trouble, and they know they've got parents that like to flip out on people. Next thing you know, like I said, you tell a kid they're not working hard enough or something like that. Yeah. Next thing you know, they're like, "You're bullying my kid. You're saying they're lazy. You're calling my child lazy." Stuff like that. Like,
well, they're also kind of in a place where they can't even help kids that they want to help, because their hands are so tied.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would take that home, and that would probably keep me up at night and stuff.
Yeah, really tough job. I mean, I've been training to do teaching, but I always want to teach adults, and that's not because I dislike children. It's just I don't think I'm equipped to work with them at all.
No.
My whole life, I've had like adult like I've never. I know how to change to talk to children. I'm just not willing to do it. And since I'm around children so rarely, it's not a problem. But if I was around children a lot, it would become a problem because I don't change how I talk when I talk to kids. I won't curse, but it's not like I'm a usual casual. I mean, people hear me curse on here, but I'm more playing around. Like, it's actually not part of my usual daily life in public to be throwing out the F-bomb. It's really not. I'm not really a casual swearer. So yeah, I won't swear around kids, but that's not because like, oh, I love swearing, but I have to like keep it down when I'm around kids. But I just mean, yeah, like I've never concerned about a kid understanding me or not. But if you have to like work with kids or live with kids, you need to clarify. So I'm not even saying, oh, dumbing it down, because no, I mean, sometimes you're not dumbing it down. You're just literally adjusting it so that they will understand. But I go through life not needing that. So I'll just speak to a kid the same way I'll speak to an adult. And if they don't understand, I don't care.
Right.
So,
well, I think
that would be an issue if I was a teacher. You can't do that way. You have to make.
If I was a kid, I would appreciate that though.
Yeah.
You're not dumbing it down.
Well, in my experience, the funny thing about that's kind of funny is that like most kids want to at least pretend they understand. I'll tell you something fairly inappropriate. This does fall under the category of inappropriate. It's one of the only times in my life I babysat was when I was living in my first apartment with my sister and my roommate. And my sister had sort of a side gig, sometimes babysitting for this annoying rich family. You can picture them perfectly. The guy's like in his 50s, wealthy. He's got like a blonde trophy wife who's like 15 years younger than him. She's always in like weird suits and stuff. And they have two kids, 2 boys. One boy was like, I don't know, 3, and one was like 6. I don't know. Anyway, we had to fill in for her a couple times. And it wasn't too bad. But I just remember once they were talking about my sister and they were saying how we were different from her. And I think they were saying like, oh, we like it better when you guys come. Like that. And he said something like, that's because boys are better than girls. And I said, yeah. Like that, right? And I said, yeah. I did not correct him, which I get, because I don't even feel that way. But anyway, I was like, yeah. And then Shane had said something about, that's my friend, not one of the kids, had said something about how, well, girls could do different things. We could do different things and stuff like that. Yeah. And again, I'm talking to a 6-year-old, and I said, well, I don't know if it's true, but they say that girls are capable of multiple orgasms, whereas guys can only have one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the kid just had no reaction. Like he didn't want to pretend he didn't know what I was talking about, so he just never said anything. Now there was the off chance that at some point he's going to say orgasm to his parents or in front of his parents, but I didn't care, and we just went on. But I was almost sort of testing it because I didn't think he would ask, and he didn't. The conversation just continued back to whatever. So,
what if he had asked?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It was so long ago. I was 21 years old. I wasn't as mature as I am now. I certainly gave less fucks back then. There's a good chance I could have at least somewhat explained it. I don't know.
When a man loves a woman, his penis gets erect.
Yeah. I mean, probably not, because like, even though, as I said, I didn't really care, that's not really a conversation I want to have either, right? So I would probably if he had asked, I would have said, yeah, I'll find out. It's probably what I did. So
go ask your mother.
Yeah. That is possible, but yeah, but I mean,
go ask your mother.
They were
dumb. She doesn't know about orgasms.
They were dumb, spoiled kids. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
But, they were spoiled. I remember we even took them to a place that was like a country club to run around in.
Wow. They were rich.
Yeah, they were rich. Oh, yeah. Really big house in this whole area of Halifax that has big houses. What's funny, though, is that as nice as that area is, it actually is close to train tracks, which is kind of a funny, weird thing. So they still have to deal with trains going by. But yeah. But they're exactly what you picture. He's like this 50-some guy, salt and pepper hair, glasses. Has some sort of, I don't know, tech company job, makes a lot of money. He's got this blonde trophy wife. And again, I barely talk to the father. Like, he's barely involved, as you expect. Doesn't really have any opinion on the children or what they're doing. That's mom's territory. So she was always the one giving us the instructions and bossing us around, blah, blah. But again, we only did it about 3 times. But I did not like them or their kids. And I'm sure their kids who are full adults now are
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
they're probably stupid people.
20-somethings themselves.
Yeah. But who knows? Maybe they turned out okay after all. I don't know.
I'm sure the nepotism ran deep, and they're probably CEOs on something.
Yeah, I'm sure they're quite well off. I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
But that's fine. But as I said, but that's in 20 years. I've really, again, have limited contact with kids and stuff like that. But I mean, I would never just say something really inappropriate just to fuck with a kid or something. You know, I wouldn't go. But I just never really had to make an effort to change how I speak to a kid. And in my experience, most of the time, even if they don't understand, they won't ask questions because I think they want to seem like they do understand. Like that. I mean, I talk to Ryan's kids. I'm not scarring them. But again, I'm not really changing. I kind of talk to Ryan's oldest son the way I talk to Ryan, more or less. You know, I mean, it's got to be like 9.
You know what 69 is?
Yeah. See, I would not just go out and bait. You know, I wouldn't set traps or say anything deliberately. You know, but if something came up, I would be quite honest. I'll put it that way.
Kids grew up faster than we did. You know, in that they have so many resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's true.
Because I mean, hell, do you remember like having arguments like with a friend or maybe your mom or something? And it's like you just it never ends. Like you never have a winner or a loser on who's right or wrong, just because there's no way to prove it, right? But now, you know, you don't ever have that anymore. It's like you Google, you know, okay, you're wrong, or you know.
I guess so. What's funny about that is I remember a few years ago there was this annoying commercial for. I think it was maybe for an internet provider or something like that. And it had this running thing throughout the commercial. It had a family. It was like a mother and 2 kids. And the boy was young. I don't remember how young. And the girl was a couple years older, but still young kids. And the boy would ask the mother annoying questions, you know. And then the sister would show up and she'd have like an iPad or something to look up the shit for it, you know. And they do like 3 or 4 of those until finally the gag is he asks some, I don't know, awkward question. I don't know. But the thing they were trying to show is like, I don't know, their devices or their network works. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. Right. And they were showing this family dynamic where it's like, you'd always count on sis because she had the iPad to look it up. And I just remember watching with my mother years ago and just saying about my own sister, I was like, I did that with you and Mary just knew that stuff.
Yeah.
Like my sister is the smartest person I've ever known. And so I can remember having lots of those questions. And my sister just knew them because she read every fucking thing in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, my sister didn't look that shit up. She'd already found it out on her own and knew it in most of my experience. So yeah, I mean, it's good that we can look things up. As I said, it's weird. There are still obviously smart kids, and I'm not saying kids are dumb or anything like that. But again, I do think we're lowering the bar for them in some places. Again, this isn't from too recently. I remember maybe even 10 years ago seeing like some snippet of like a talk show. And it's like, today we got like extraordinary kids on here. And one of the kids was like naming like US presidents and stuff like that. And it's just like, I could have done any of that when I was that age. That would have been no problem. And nobody would have called me a prodigy. You know, you think I couldn't remember names and dates? I get it. A lot of kids can't, but I wouldn't pronounce this kid like a genius just because he could like name state capitals or presidents, because I could too. So, I mean, I can still remember my old dinosaur knowledge. I had crazy encyclopedic dinosaur knowledge. That was my favorite thing between the ages of like 3 and 10. You know, I'd talk about, you know, what the dinosaur's name. I would talk about its diet, what era it lived in, what part of the world, all that shit.
Yeah.
I didn't put me on a talk show, but you know, I didn't have an agent, so I turned down that one modeling gig, which is real, and that changed my whole life apparently.
You could have been the Mikey Likes It kid.
If only. I don't know. I mean, it is sort of full of yourself because, like, in California, it's a big place, a lot of people. But I kind of feel like if I grew up in California, I could have gotten on like a sitcom as a kid, because I had like kind of the qualities you wanted. Like, I listened to adults and did what they told me to do, and I was smart and I could remember lines, and I was at least, you know, I'm not saying I was the best looking kid out there, but I was certainly camera friendly looking kid, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, could have been different. But who knows? I'm not saying
honestly though. All the problems that go along with the child actors, man, I don't even know if I would have wanted that.
Right. And I'm saying that is kind of what's funny about the whole modeling thing is, like, I think that kind of proves it. Because all those years ago, when they came to the school and they had picked out my sister or something because she was a redhead and had sort of a unique look, and they asked her if she had any brothers or sisters, and they told them about me, and they're like, oh, him, yeah, he'd be good too. It's like a Sears catalog thing like that. And so then when I talked to my mother and said, like, she said, well, do you want to do it? I was 7. And I said, no, because all that meant was a bunch of sitting still. My mom was like, fine, cool. And that was it. And I think that sort of shows, like, yeah, I would not have been suited for that sort of lifestyle, not just like modeling, but that sort of thing. Because I even then I valued the idea of being an ordinary kid. I'm not saying this would have led and made me super famous. I'm just saying that kind of stuff. Like I didn't want to be a working kid. Like I was just like I just want to live my normal life.
At least she gave you the option, though. I mean, a lot of kids don't.
Yeah, a lot of parents they hear that and that's great, and they think, again, like my sister actually did it. Did that lead to anything? No, and it's not like that. So
those stage moms are the worst, man. It's like what are the like beauty pageant little girls and stuff like that's
they
like
should like outlaw those things.
I agree.
Those are creepy and full of like child abuse.
And I feel like, I mean, who wants to see it besides pedophiles?
Yeah, I mean that's part of the creepy angle, obviously.
I mean, what? Yeah, I don't. It's like the mom will be some like 400-pound beast that's just trying to live vicariously through their child, and that goes all the way through, even when they're in high school, and even the Miss America, Miss Universe type stuff.
I'm all for kids having like maybe a talent show type thing, but
sure.
Yeah, but the way they make it all creepy and stuff because they do like all sorts of weird adult things and make them do all sorts of like modeling.
Yeah,
and stuff.
It's weird. It's very weird.
I don't even, and I mean, it wouldn't be even great if they were like 12, but we're talking about like sometimes like 5-year-olds.
Yeah, or
right?
younger.
Like, that is messed up. Like
and they're made to look like an adult woman. I mean, a of age woman, with makeup.
I know
and
it's weird. It seems so against what society says. It's like a weird contradiction because the whole thing about society is like keep the adult stuff away from the kids. Don't make them like whores and stuff, and all this stuff will lead to kids getting molested and stuff like that. And then you have that. It's just like, wouldn't it be cute if we sexualize the child?
No,
it's like no. What are you saying? I thought we were talking about how like society is bad for the way it sexualizes child. So what are you doing? Like I don't get it at all. It's messed up.
Well, the same people that would shit on cuties would be okay with that stuff, It's like the same thing.
Yeah. But recalling that conversation from years ago, I did watch Cuties, and I do think it has merit. And a lot of people didn't like what it sounded like on paper and wanted Netflix to ban it. But I think the movie's fine. I don't like it's making the point it's making. I have no objection.
There's one scene I'm not okay with, but yeah.
Well, as I said, the weirdest part of Cuties, of course, is that like they are making the point that because they are making the point that the kids are being sexualized at this age because of society. These girls, they're not in pageants; they're just seeing this stuff on their own and wanting to imitate it, which is very true and true to life. And it shows that. But just the weird part is like when you work through it in your head, you do realize that since it is a movie, it's not like what's happening in fiction where the girls are watching these videos and they're like, in this, it's a movie. So adults are teaching them that. So that is kind of awkward to think about that. Like they had rehearsals where like, again, these preteen girls are learning the sexualized dance as being taught to them by adults for the movie. Because they had to be like, okay, this is just for the movie. We don't want you doing this anywhere. But yeah.
Well, I would say the vast majority of people that have a problem with that movie haven't seen it. So.
Well, exactly, right? That's what I mean. They're just like,
that's the way it is with everything.
I mean, that's how with most people that object to anything. And I mean, I get it because at least because they think they're on the hill that is worth dying for because they're like child sexual exploitation. Like, how can you not be against it? I was like, I get it. Blah blah blah. Context. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Or stuff like that. But as I said, the one thing about that movie that is kind of awkward, so you have to accept the fact that they were taught that stuff for the purposes of the movie, but they still obviously had to have like rehearsals where the adult is like sort of teaching like the 12-year-olds sort of like these overly suggestive sexual moves and stuff. They're like, yeah, that is kind of tricky,
But at the same turn, you've got 8-year-olds trying to model themselves after Taylor Swift, who is probably not the best person to model your life after, or
has her image become more sexualized? Like
well, no, I'm just saying she's always, she's dated John Mayer and, all these other guys. And just, I mean, she, kind of does sexual stuff on stage with children watching.
Oh, yeah. Like a lot of the pop. I mean, that's what
I would say most.
That's what most of the pop stars do. I mean, I don't know much about Billie Eilish and she's annoying to me, but she doesn't seem to do that angle. She seems to wear like kind of like baggy clothes and stuff. So I guess I respect that.
She's got massive breasts, but you never know it because she just got like 3 sweatshirts on, which is fine.
Right. So, I mean, I kind of respect that because obviously, people handling her, let's exploit the shit out of that. Let's get her in skimpy outfits and blah, blah. And obviously, she doesn't want to do that. So I respect that. I don't really like her weird singing, which is mostly, I saw a clip of her doing a song at the end of the Olympics. I was like, oh, so she can emote. Because most of the songs I heard, the whole point was she's deadening her voice to sound as unemotional and bored as possible. And I hate it. And yet I guess people love it. Like, they love it. But anyway, this song she was singing like an ordinary person and showing she had a pretty good voice and she could sing with passion and emotion. I was like, holy shit, I had no idea. Because most of her songs that I heard is she's singing like a robot. And I don't like it, but people like it. But anyway, like I said, I respect that. That's cool that, like I said, she could push things more in a provocative way, and she doesn't. But we talked about this before, like all this crazy hypocrisy of our society. Like, it's like, okay, like a couple years ago, they had Shakira and J-Lo on like the halftime show, doing like practically a striptease and stuff like that. It's like, that's good family entertainment. Again, I'm the furthest thing from a prude. I'm just sort of amused by the strange hypocrisy that
it's very much a pick and choose.
Yeah, but what's okay, what's acceptable, and what's not is for some people and not for other people and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So yeah. So I mean, as far as Taylor Swift goes, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what she says about. She's obviously aware she has very young fans. I don't know what she feels about that. Because I mean, some people, they'll just take the easy way and they'll be like, I never said I was a role model. And you can't do anything about it. You could say, well, you kind of are anyway. They'd be like, well, I didn't choose to be. And that is true. If you're famous, you don't necessarily choose to be a role model. And people can say you have a responsibility to blah, blah, blah. But people will be like, but people can at least argue that they don't. So I don't know. I don't know where the fuck that stands. Yeah. I don't think about it. Like I said, I don't have kids, so I don't have to think about it too much about how they're being influenced by stars. But I mean, I get it because it's bad enough how influenced adults are by stars. So it's, worse for kids who are more susceptible.
Well, it's, I mean, there are definitely much worse people that much worse artists that people do look up to, younger people like at least Taylor Swift's not talking about how wet her pussy is,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you reach a level of popularity of her that she's reached, like, she might as well be a Martian. Like, she is so far, like, it's not her fault, but she is so far from an ordinary human being. Her life experience is so far from what 99.9 of us experience. It's not her fault. She's just a victim of success. And in many ways, it's great for her. But I mean, how can she relate to anybody? She just lives this insane life.
Well, yeah.
And I mean, at least she hasn't like been, like fallen down like so many of these stars that do, like Lindsay Lohan, who couldn't handle any of her fame, fucked up at every turn.
Amanda Bynes, have you seen her lately? Gosh.
She used to be so pretty.
Oh, she is. Hell, I'll pull up a picture. You haven't seen it?
No. But I mean, I've always said this, regardless of who the star is or the behavior, they can even have really good behavior, like where it's like, well, actually, they're a pretty nice person and, they have good views and they're not so bad as a role model. Even that, it's still, we've reached a level of devotion that I find disturbing. Like, I've seen like footage of people that call themselves Swifties and it's kind of scary and cultish. Like, I get it. It's innocent. They like the pop star who sings the nice music. And as far as I know, Taylor Swift doesn't do anything that bad or terrible. And she's probably not such a bad influence on people as far as that goes. But just the level of devotion is still kind of terrifying when you get to that level, like these Swifties. Like fandoms in general. We talked about this before, like toxic fandom. It's toxic for everything. Like whether it's Star Wars or whatever. Like, you can't put so much of yourself into this thing, have it define everything you do or care about. It's just not healthy. I love all sorts of stuff and I care about it and I can get into a conversation about it and it can affect me, but you got to take a step back from it or it'll consume you. You can't give up your identity to like being a fan of a sports team or a pop star or whatever. Amanda Bynes, would she be like late 30s now? She's only a few years younger than me, I think.
Yeah. That sounds about right. Let me couldn't find a good image. God damn it.
Hold on, never mind. Let me find something else.
I think the last thing I can remember her in was Easy A.
Yeah, Easy A was good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good movie about high school.
And she was still looked pretty much the same.
Yep.
Let's see. Can you see this? Okay. Well, she's got a heart tattoo on her face.
Was she another one that was not actually a blonde? I mean, she was always a blonde back in the day.
I don't know what her natural color is. It may have been brunette, like on the Amanda show.
I'm not saying that's important or anything. It's like, I don't care. I mean, if people want to color their hair, that's fine. Like, you're a phony. Like, color your hair. I just sometimes, like, blondes seem to be kind of dying out in media. So now when I find out, like, someone was blonde and it turns out they aren't even actual blonde, I'm like, I thought blondes used to be the most popular. I mean, I get it. Things should swing the other way. I'm not going to get a big thing because it doesn't matter. I get it. Blondes really had their day in the sun in, like, the 50s, 60s, 70s or whatever. And things move and things with. I don't know. They seem to be just dying out of media.
Well, they're dying out of the world.
I mean, they are, but not at the crazy rate people would make it seem like. Like, they are. Just like blue-eyed people are technically dying out of the world. But that's still going to take a while. But, like, by the way, I'm not going to get into it because it's going to make it sound like, oh, Cole's going to get into a thing about representation and diversity. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Uh-huh.
I'm not getting into any of that.
Maybe it was the Kardashian effect is kind of what knocked blondes off.
Yeah, maybe.
Something
as we said, that's had a weird effect on how standards of beauty in general. That I don't know. People can like whatever they like. I don't care. I'm not judging people for what they find attractive. That is fine. There's always going to be people that are into stuff that I'm just like, what, really? But that's fine. It doesn't affect me. I don't care.
I've always been into brunettes myself, but blondes are cool too.
What's funny is, like, I was really into blondes growing up, and then, like, proceeded to date none. There's still time, I suppose. But I mean,
didn't date any natural blondes, I don't think.
I mean, on my run of, like, Asians, obviously that's not going to happen. So, but
man, I saw an Asian girl the other day with blonde hair. It looked like
sometimes it looks good. It can look good. Yeah, it can look good. Cause sometimes you think, oh, it's going to look really weird, but it can look good.
It does look weird sometimes too, though.
Yeah. And speaking of that, about how things have changed, and sort of on that thing, and this even ties into something else I said about high school. It's funny. It's like the very first shot of the movie, like, that's actually after you have the photo thing. The very first shot is her at the cafeteria. In the back, you see that the school she goes to is I think it's Ben Franklin Junior High, and they are the Franklin Chiefs. They're called the Chiefs, and they've got, like, an Indian head thing. That's not in school anymore. You can't have your mascot be the Chiefs. I'll tell you. So when I went
savages now,
right. So when I went to high school, after I left Malcolm, I didn't go to the funnel school, the county school. That's Riverview. I went back to Sydney to go to Sydney Academy. Sydney Academy's colors were blue and white, and technically all the teams were the Wildcats. The Riverview colors were red and white. Always red and white. And the name of their teams, like hockey and what else they did, that doesn't matter, rugby and stuff, were the Redmen. A few years ago, that got canceled. Even though the Redmen never, ever referenced, like, people of indigenous heritage. It meant people wearing red. Like, it didn't have, like, a logo with an Indian chief on it or any sort of Indian image. I don't even remember. Like, just somebody in red. It had nothing to do with that. But anyway, they changed it. It's something else now anyway. Just because red men could be interpreted as some sort of, like, derogatory thing of, like, indigenous people. And I mean, it's funny. Lots of people of indigenous heritage went to and go to that school, more so than Sydney Academy. They had more of the natives or whatever. And stuff like that. And I mean, I can't remember anybody having a problem with it because I don't think anybody ever thought that it referred to that. But eventually somebody said something and it's gone, and I don't care. But I'm just saying it is kind of silly because red men literally meant the guys in red, wearing red is what it meant.
I was looking up here. Okay, the Cleveland Indians are now the Cleveland Guardians. The Redskins are the
Washington
Commanders now.
I don't remember what Washington is.
Something
I remember
like
Guardians. That. Yeah. Redskins is a little bit much. I understand changing Redskins.
Sure.
I don't think you need to change Indians or Chiefs, but I don't know.
Well,
I'm not an authority.
I don't know.
I mean, the main reason the Blackhawks still exist in the NHL is because the Blackhawks is more complicated. It is referring to people of Indian heritage, but it's also referring not to a tribe, but a specific army unit. That's what it's a tribute to. It's a tribute to an army unit from World War II or some war. Yeah, it must be before World War II. But it was in World War II, but it originated before because the Blackhawks didn't originate before that. But anyway, it refers to some sort of U.S. Army unit that was made up of indigenous people. So that's basically the main reason they've been able to keep that, because it's not
like the wind talkers or something.
Yeah, something like that. In any case, for all I mean, there's indigenous people. I mean, I'm glad they do have a very big voice in hockey. And I've never heard anybody express anything against the Blackhawks. So it seems like that's going to stay. Did you know that for like decades, that's been the most voted the best NHL logo? I don't even think that'd be top 10 for me. But year after year, that is considered the best NHL logo by people. I think it's nice, but it's not. I don't even know if it's top 10 for me.
Let me look it up. Oh yeah, I do like that. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm a white guy. I can't really speak to that being offensive or not. But
I mean, as far as I know, and again, that's why it's still standing. It's like there is an understanding that what it's supposed to be about. And again, I cannot speak for indigenous peoples or their communities, but from what I've heard, like most of them seem to be okay with it and not have an issue.
Most have been changed. I think one that won't change is the Florida State Seminoles, because they are really closely tied with that Indian tribe or Native American tribe. Like the guy will get up. One of the members of the Florida State Seminoles. They're really
just go back to say what you think won't change. Something about changing.
Yeah, the Florida State Seminoles. Their logo is obviously Native American, but they're really tied with that tribe. Right. The tribe is there where the school is located, and like the tribe is a big part of their celebration and all of their stuff. Like one of the members will ride around on a horse and stuff, and like the tribe supports it. So that's one reason why I don't think it'll change, because I mean, you can't just erase everything. I mean, yeah, a lot of bad shit happened, but we can't change that now. We can not make fun of it, but I think that's more of, empowering them than anything.
Yeah. As I said, the Blackhawks thing is supposed to be a tribute, so I think most people accept that. And I mean, sometimes like things that have just become unacceptable now, like they weren't. It wasn't the intent. Like if you look up at the history of various indigenous hockey players in their history in the NHL, get somebody like George Armstrong, who's captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, for instance. Like his nickname was Chief. A lot of those guys, their nickname was Chief. That wouldn't fly today, but back then they meant well. Like they weren't trying to be jerks about it. They thought they were being kind of nice. And I get it. The Indians were like, okay, Chief. Yeah. They just sort of rolled with it. Nowadays, you wouldn't want to call the Indian guy in your locker room Chief. You look like an asshole. But, back then, like, I think they just sort of accepted it. They're like, okay, they mean well. They're not,
Well, Chief just means like boss, right? Like, we're like, hey, big man.
It does. But these were,
Chief.
I know, but these were specifically the Indian players. Like,
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
That's what I mean. These were, like, I can think of at least 3 or 4 prominent NHLers from like the original 6 era, and they all had that nickname. That's just the nickname their teammates gave them. Again, they weren't doing it, they thought they were kind of being nice, but I mean that's the kind of like well, as we said, like there's overt racism, which we always have to do our best to get rid of and eliminate and stand up to and stuff like that. And then there's the, well, we mean well, and we're making idiots of ourselves type of stuff that has been around a long time and people are much more aware of and stuff like that. Like, it's like watching that episode
of, right? It's all about intent.
Like watch that episode of Saved by the Bell where Zach tries to like fake his way through an assignment saying he was of Indian heritage. It's like so offensive.
I need to rewatch that. Yeah, that is.
Oh
wild.
My God, it is ridiculous. Yeah.
But like if you were say in the NHL right now, like your nickname may be Ginger or some shit, like your teammates may call you Ginger, something like that.
This has nothing to do with anything, but I will say that like nicknames in the NHL suck now. They haven't been good in like 30 years. Guys used to have cool nicknames. Now it's mostly they just sort of take the guy's name and add like C to it or something.
Yeah.
Like nobody has a cool nickname anymore. My favorite nickname for a player he was a star player, but he's not really well known. He was a Slovak player named Peter Bondra. Before Alek Ovechkin, Peter Bondra was the goal scorer extraordinaire for the Washington Capitals. He led the league in goals a couple times, had a couple of 50-goal seasons. And Peter Bondra, I guess because he played in Washington, D.C., and because, I don't know, he was cool. Anyway, his nickname was the Special Agent. That's always been my favorite NHL nickname. Because it had actual, I don't know, something to it. Nowadays, they don't seem to add anything. Now it's just, again, it's just some sort of twist on their name. It doesn't have anything to do with it. I don't know. I mean, Pavel Bure was the Russian Rocket. I mean, we had Rocket Richard, but then Pavel Bure became the Russian Rocket. And I don't know.
I'm sure someone will find a way to be offended by that.
Well, everybody's offended by Russia these days, including me. And like I said, well, if you want, like, I agree with like Russia not being able to participate in tournaments, and people say, "Oh, why are you punishing the players?" I'm like, it's not punishing the players. Like I do.
They weren't in the
Olympics,
players, right? Russia was not
right
there.
Yeah, and 4 years or whatever, ever since Ukraine, like they have not participated in any like of the main hockey tournaments. It's a junior level or the adult level. You know, they are not part of it. They're not invited. They're not allowed. Mm-hmm. And some people have been like, well, you know, you're just punishing players that, you know, they're not responsible for the political situation. And I get that, but you still have to do it. And I
could agree with that. I mean, it is punishing them, whether or not you want to, you know.
Yeah.
I
still feel like it's the right stance. Like I said, I feel bad. I do feel sympathy for a lot of these Russian players because I'm sure plenty of them aren't pro-war. And what's nice is there have been several prominent Russian NHLers who have come out very anti-it, which is nice because not everybody does that, like Ovechkin, who is basically a little lapdog for Putin. You know, but there have been some prominent NHLers like Artemi Panarin and Nikita Zadorov who have been very critical of Putin, and since then, you know, have been very anti-war and are against it. You know, which is not always an easy stance to take either. It is Russia. Well, you have family back there.
That means you're not going back to Russia anytime soon. Not until
that's what it means.
Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, I get it. So I realize there are plenty of Russians, and maybe some haven't even spoken out publicly, but you know, they are against the war. They don't think it's right, and I do feel bad that they can't be part of these tournaments. But I still think it's the right move. You have to do this in a thing. You have to punish Russia as an entity and show that this isn't acceptable. And also, as far as like say a young Russian player like who's like not a pro yet, who's developing, Russia does still have really good leagues and things like that. Their development is not going to get completely derailed that they can't do that stuff. And I mean, Russian imports are still allowed to come over and play in leagues here too. So it's not like that. It's just as a team, they can't compete as like a national team. So it's not like Russian players are being completely shortchanged and they can't play anywhere or do anything, and it's going to screw up the development of guys that want to be pros. They've got plenty of options.
When did that start? Did that start when this war started?
Yeah. A lot of people thought it should have started in 2014, the first time they did it, and it didn't. But anyway, so I'm glad that the IIHF and the other people that make those decisions have decided to just hold firm on excluding Russia from these things. I think Belarus is also excluded.
And we've hit a lot of bases in this almost 2 hours. We've touched on a lot of important.
We got more political than we probably meant to get, but
fuck it. We do what we want to do over here.
We do. But we'll come back to the movie if there's things. I mean, obviously it's not our job to like say every single thing that happens in the movie. So it's not like we need to give a plot summary. I'm just trying to think if there's any area of the movie that really needed to be looked at, so maybe we jumped over or anything like that. But not really. I mean, we get a good feel for, the main characters are her family, Steve, Brandon, to a certain extent, Lolita, although she's less important as the movie goes on.
Yeah, I kind of expected more out of that character. Honestly.
Yeah, me too. I thought she would have more to do.
Maybe
she kind of disappears in the final act.
Maybe they cut some of that out.
It's entirely possible. It's a pretty short, tight movie, so you assume there was stuff they cut out because this is a. Mm-hmm. So just getting back to some of the stuff I just mentioned at the start, for getting back to Solondz and where he was in his career, this is kind of his breakout movie.
Yeah.
So it's a low budget movie, as you might expect. And, not full of name actors and like that. And if you listen to the soundtrack is mostly public domain, classical music because they couldn't afford to have. And I think that's actually good because, let's say the movie had the budget where you could have had some of the popular hits of the mid '90s on there. Like, you don't need it. I don't think it really adds anything to the movie. You have a Smashing Pumpkins song on there. Is that really gonna make the movie better?
They use some like punk rock music in between the certain scenes.
Yeah,
I saw the name of it earlier.
There's a song that almost sounds like Metallica when she goes to meet the girl to ask about her thing with Steve when she's making out with the guy in the car. I mean, it's not Metallica, but it's the guy's doing like a James Hetfield impression of the singer, kind of. It's
the band The Undead. The Evening of Desire is the name of the song. You may look that up and listen to it. It's kind of interesting. So it's like, I've never heard of that band before, and they're not even like blue to click on. So it's probably the only thing they've ever been in. So they probably paid for it, but it probably wasn't very expensive.
Right. So Solondz is a lot like many filmmakers. Throughout the 80s, he was like a film student. He made some short film student stuff. Tried to get things. He wrote and directed a film in 1989 called Fear, Anxiety, and Depression, which I've never seen. That
look that up.
Didn't make much of a blip. Stanley Tucci, an unknown Stanley Tucci, shows up in that. But anyway, by the 90s, he was already like concerned that he, was gonna not make it. That he was gonna fail as a filmmaker, and he went on like hiatus for like 4 years, like basically not even trying. Like he thought like it was a dead end, and I think it says he had a friend who was a lawyer that basically said you should give it another shot, and that's what this movie was. So he was almost ready to quit and try to go on to a different career when somebody inspired him and said that he should try, and that the result was this movie. And luckily the movie went on to do very well, winning the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival. So it is nice when you see a movie, because we often talk about dark comedies and satires and stuff, and how so many of them fail early because people don't get it. And, it takes years for like a cult following to come or for people to reevaluate it, and then they finally get it. Like out of the gate, there were at least some people that got this movie, which is nice. And that's really kind of how Solondz was obviously successful enough to keep going. And he followed this up with Happiness.
Right. Well, yeah, after this, it's all, I think still relatively low budget movies, but they all have name actors going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think he developed sort of a reputation, and people wanted to work with him, obviously.
Right, exactly. So he must be a pretty good director to work for if actors are clamoring to basically do his films for free. Yeah.
It says that he's supposed to be working on a film that somehow is a twist on the story of Oedipus, which is pretty funny, and Elizabeth Olsen is supposed to be in it. So we'll see if that happens, because his last actual film was Wiener Dog in 2016. So his films, there's big gaps between them. Because he's done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's done 8 feature-length films since 1989. And he's been the writer of all of them. He's the director and writer for all of them.
It's the exact same style, the just dark cutting comedies. And I would recommend watch all of these. I think they're all great movies. Everything he's done, I think is great.
I love movies, of course, for escapism, and that's one of the main reasons I watch them. That's why I'm a big comic fan and stuff like that. But I do appreciate movies that reflect reality. I like how real this movie is. I think it's some of the most realistic bullying I've ever seen in a movie. And part of that is because of the era, because it's the same era as me. So I was like, yeah, that's what it was like at that time frame. And bullying is bullying, but it has evolved and changed over the years and various things. It still boils down to the same stuff. Even in today's society, a girl like her would be a pretty good target for bullies, because it still comes down, like I said, looks. We still live in a society where you were so judged by your looks almost immediately. Even by the time you're like a toddler, people are deciding whether or not you're pleasant to look at or not, and how to treat you, and how to interact with you, and what to expect from you. So, I'm sure there's, unattractive 12, 13-year-olds, boys and girls, that are having a rough time of it right now. But the language is changing and different, and sometimes the methods change. As we said, in some way, it's funny. I don't know what is worse, because I think we're more aware of bullying. We take it more seriously as a society. And I do think we've done a better job of trying to make people aware of the damage it can do and being more careful with the words they say. But at the same time, when people really want to bully, they'll tune that shit out because they want to hurt this person. They want to insult them. And now it just seems like there's so many other ways to do it because of the internet stuff. Right now, there's a cyberbullying thing to it.
Right.
Insulting people on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all this shit. You can stalk somebody and harass them in all these other ways. So it's pretty bad.
Did you ever follow that story of that girl who she was talking to this guy? I think they were just friends, and then she encouraged him to kill himself, and he got some sort of gas powered generator and put it in his car.
Yep.
And I think she did get some jail time for that, because not only did she do that, but she had all these huge not fundraisers, but just big things, to remember him and stuff, in her town, which he wasn't even from that town. So she kind of got a lot of attention out of it herself, which I think was the reason she did it.
Yeah, I saw a lot about that. I mean, you see the text she was sending him. You're going to do it, right? You're going to he's actually arguing against it, saying like maybe he shouldn't, and she's basically saying you gotta. And it's awful.
That's
And the way, and as you expect, the way her lawyer defended her is so gross. I mean, I get it. Lawyers have to do their job. This is what my dad does. My dad represents criminals and protects their rights and stuff. But I mean, the way they did it was just trying to absolve her of any responsibility. What she was doing was absolutely horrible and disgusting.
Well, I mean, people do have free will, so I mean, but
you have free will, but yeah.
I don't know.
We also have mental issues that impair the decisions we make, and there's also such thing as people taking advantage of that, which I think she clearly did. And again, because she didn't care about him at all, she wanted the attention it would generate for herself. And that's probably the thing that I hate the most about society now, whether it's kids or people, is just how addicted people are to attention, how much they crave it, and how so many of them will do anything for it. There's so many people out there that are willing to do horrible things knowing it will give them bad attention, but that's okay because that's what they want.
I remember once gotten worse with social media and YouTube and TikTok and things,
I mean, even recently I saw a video of some guy, I don't know, some state Florida or something like that, and I'm trying to remember, he had put up a bunch of signs and stuff, it was all done in a way that wasn't completely overtly racist, but it was something about, kind of a white power type thing, right? It was done it was done in language that could be interpreted differently, so it's not but it's obvious to anybody watching, he's talking about white, some sort of white supremacy stuff or stuff against minorities, stuff like that. And I remember comments on the video, and again, it is true. Information and misinformation is hard to tell what's real. And several people were saying that this guy, it was a troll job, and they were laughing. And I'm thinking, let's say it is a troll job and he's just made it up. Who goes out and blows up their own life just to get to do this sort of thing? Are you going to explain that to your employer? Well, I'm not really racist. I was just trying to trigger some people. It was a troll job. It's okay, your life is destroyed now. Have fun that. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know there are people that are willing to go with certain lengths. That's the other thing too. You'll see a lot of fake conflicts and stuff too. It's did that person assault that person? It's no, it was just some bullshit some people made up. Oh God, there is real assault and people attacking people and stuff happening. We don't need it muddied by people going out there with cameras and fucking faking it. Jesus, life is messed up enough. But yeah, just the addiction to attention is crazy. I'm not even on TikTok. Twitter's enough. I can't click on anything or follow anything without, some OnlyFans model or something shoving their stuff in your face. And I get it. OnlyFans can make you money, but it still comes from attention too. I don't know.
It was a good episode of Black Mirror, kind of like that, with Bryce Dallas Howard.
It's like everyone had some sort of device. I don't know if it was.
Is that where they like rank each other?
Yeah, where every person you look at, you can see their score, their like social score.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's been a few years, but I've seen that.
I feel like it's very like relevant to now.
They did a thing like that on one of the Community seasons too. Meow Meow Beans. Remember Meow Meow Beans? It was pretty funny too because it took like a few days. Within a few days, that they turned into like this kind of like Logan's Run society. It's pretty funny. Where you would rate whether people were from 1 to 5.
That's horrible.
Yeah, they were the testing ground for some sort of app where you would like rate people and give them ratings, and it took like a few days to destroy the entire campus, which happened a lot of the show where things would destroy the campus. But yeah, I mean that's from over 10 years ago.
I need to go watch that again. I've heard a lot of stuff lately with Joel McHale talking about his experiences with Chevy Chase.
Yeah, Chevy Chase was far from the only asshole in the show. What it sucks is the creator, he's done cool stuff, but he's such a jerk. I can't stand him.
What's his name? Oh, you can't think of it either. Shoot, Harmon.
Mark
Dan
Harmon.
Harmon.
Yeah, Dan Harmon. Dan Harmon. Because I mean, it's funny too. It's one of those things where like sometimes like if you don't pay too much attention to stuff, you don't really know everything or anything like that, right? Because years ago, Dan Harmon had done this thing where he admitted to, although I think because it came out, about being an asshole specifically to some woman on set because he had like a crush on her that she did not reciprocate, and he kind of went out of his way to sort of like be a jerk to her and create problems for her and all this, right? Like he didn't do anything illegal, I don't think, but he really walked the line of professionalism. It was just an absolute asshole to her and really messed up her life because he was angry that she'd rejected him, more or less, right? And he gave one of the better apologies I've ever seen. Like most of these apologies are fake and not real apologies that are garbage. His looked real. Yeah. And his looked actually pretty real. And it seemed to suggest that he like took some time to understand exactly what he'd done and how it affected. Anyway, it seemed pretty sincere. And I thought, well, Dan Harmon, at least maybe he's trying. And then like I just remember a few years ago, there were different things where he'd go on podcasts and talk to people. And of course, he played the whole thing about the thing where he and Chevy Chase were flipping on each other, and he played that message that Chevy Chase had left on his machine, insulting the hell out of him. People go back and forth whether or not it's okay for whether it was a classy thing or not for Harmon to share that. I don't care that he did, honestly. I feel like if Chevy Chase left a message on the machine for Harmon, there's not some sort of binding contract that says no one will ever hear it. So I don't care about that. But I just remember, again, another couple of years or something around, like, or in the same swirl listening to stuff, it's just like he's on some podcast talking to some guy who's basically just stroking his ego. And I think they're just talking about, like, people that, like, in general don't like him or have criticized him, right? And then he goes on this massive rant about how they are completely wrong and they suck and they're losers, and he can completely debunk any bad opinion they have of him because he was successful with his like shows. That was his thing. His argument was, well, I made money. Like he actually used these words. So fuck you.
So I'm like, wow, that means Weinstein's a nice guy?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much, because that's what he's saying. He was just saying, like, any argument that you guys had against me about, like, criticizing me that, like, I'm not that talented or I'm not that good or I'm not that nice of a person. Like, he was basically saying, end of argument, I was successful and I made money, so
that's
fuck you.
Very
and he, like, and he repeated it, like, several times. I was like, wow, now I absolutely hate you. Yeah, you can find that clip on YouTube. You can find that clip on YouTube somewhere. I was like, Jesus, man, I like the Community. And it's true, like the season they kicked him off for did just fine. And I'm not going to take it because it's still built.
They kicked Harmon off of?
He got kicked off on like the fourth season.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Because he had become a problem that the people didn't want to deal with. Like, obviously some people were against it. But anyway, yeah, they brought him back, I think, for a season eventually. But the fourth season, they kicked him off. And the fourth season
was that when they were going after everybody? Like, I know Chris Hardwick got canceled for a minute, and it was basically like the Me Too movement. Basically, everyone, you say a bad word about someone, and
this was before all that. I mean, obviously, you could still say it was canceling, but this was pre that era. Back then, you would just say they fired him.
Right.
You would just say, And you wouldn't say it was because of online opinion or anything. It was they didn't want him on the show because they found him really annoying and difficult to work with. And so I wouldn't say he was canceled. I would say he was fired for legitimate reasons. It's still surprising because he was the creator of the show. But like, as far as I can tell, like he was erratic and he was, difficult to work with and not professional, and he didn't always show up or finish things, just normal work stuff. So I'm just like,
Sure.
You didn't get canceled, buddy. There weren't people that were like, oh, my feelings. It was you just weren't doing your job well, and they saw you as a problem, so they fired you. Anyway, I think he did come back. But anyway, as I said, I'm of two minds of that because one, yeah, I think they did just fine without him, but two, you can't discount the fact that he did create the show. So I mean, it's all based on his stuff. So I mean, I really dislike him now because of the stuff I heard, but I mean, I still like a lot of the stuff he did. And it became the perfect storm because then he co-created Rick and Morty with that other guy, and now both of them are canceled and they're both gone.
Oh, really? Okay.
And Rick and Morty continues on without either of them, Justin Roiland or whatever.
So do they get I mean, they don't get paid for creating that anymore at all?
I'm sure they still make money from it. They're just no longer a part of it going forward. And they still have to get credited, right? They can't have the credits without them. But they are no longer they don't write it, and they don't do and Roiland did like the main voices. He did Rick and Morty. And actually, I really am impressed by they got two separate actors to do those voices. And they're really close and really good. And in the way that Morty's is different, I think is actually better. And it also, you can always say also, because even though it's like a snapshot, Morty's always 14, you can still say he's aged a little bit. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not a huge hardcore fan of that show, and the hardcore fans of that show are insane, like most hardcore fans. But it is kind of funny. Like, they became this double whammy where they're both canceled. So, like, they're just both gone from the show. And the show just continues on without them anyway. So it also shows sort of how cutthroat the world is, because they're the co-creators, and one of the guys was the voices of both main characters, and they still kicked them out and replaced them.
Get out of here. We're still going to do the show.
So I assume they spend all their time now trashing how crappy the show is without them, because they are both petty jerks like that. Roiland's is pretty serious though. Like Roiland, or however you say his name, it was like it came out like he like abused his girlfriend or something. Like smacked her around abuse, not just like hurt her feelings or something. So it was really bad for him. So I don't know.
Well,
but I still like the show.
I never got into it. I haven't really seen a whole lot. I know a lot of the references from it, but
yeah. I mean, it was a show I resisted for years because I assumed I wouldn't like it and didn't watch it until it was like, I think it's like 5th or 6th season, which takes even longer because they didn't necessarily do a season every year. Sometimes they take a year or two off before doing another one. So like, there's like 7 seasons, but it goes back to like 2013 or something.
I still want to try that.
But then I finally watched it. I did like it. I mean, I get how it's hard because you know how meta shows have become. This is one of the most meta shows out there. So that you'll watch an episode of Rick and Morty where they're actively talking about how people don't like the new direction they're going in and how they're going to get back to basics. You know, it really, and people, I don't know. And plus, it's funny too. It also did the alternate universe thing at the exact same time. Alternate universes became huge because of the Marvel, and now everything is an alternate universe too. So if you were a latecomer to Rick and Morty, you're like, more alternate universe crap. Fuck it. Even though when they started it, not everybody was doing it. But now it just feels like that's all anything is.
Right.
All everything is multiverse shit. But it's just funny how quickly things like that change. But yeah, no, I did mostly like the show, which surprised me. I expected not to. I thought it was kind of a weak premise at first because honestly, it was sort of like a parody of like Back to the Future. The idea is like, what if Doc was actually really insane, and in this to make the relationship make more sense, because it is always kind of funny in Back to the Future why exactly this high school kid is so devoted to Doc. It's never explained or referenced, which is one of the best parts about the movie. There's not even a throwaway line suggesting like how they met or how they have this relationship. It's just understood from the first scene that Marty is friends with this scientist and he hangs out with him and does stuff. Like there's never any background or any reason given. And
you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't see that today. Like it wouldn't get greenlit with that. Like it would have to be some other relationship. Like it's his uncle or some shit, like. And
I mean, that's what they do in Rick and Morty. It's his grandfather, right? Although it makes a lot of more, but it makes sense in you need that for Rick and Morty because Rick is a dangerous, crazy sociopath is what he is. Like, he's the most cynical character in all of fiction. I'll put it that way. So you could find that tiring. because Rick is never happy. He's never impressed. He's never humble. He never learns lessons, and he's always scoffing and making fun of everything. And you've seen characters like that before, and he's taking it as far as it can go. So that can turn people off because it's just like, this guy is, I thought I was cynic, but this guy's cynicism is insane. He thinks he's the best thing in the universe and everything else is garbage, including his own family. Like, I can't take it. So yeah, I can see how some people will be like, I can't take that. But I mostly like it. It has a weird, like, if you're familiar with Justin Roiland, again, I don't know how to say his name. It's weird, his style of comedy too. It has almost a loose improvisational style to it, which seems completely out of place in something animated. Characters will often like flub and trip over their lines as they say them or repeat things. So it does kind of give some realism to it because not every line is delivered crisply like an actor. But it's kind of played up too much too, because Morty often, when he's upset, will kind of stutter too. So that's part of it. So I don't know. So there's a weird randomness to a lot of the humor that some people will think is brilliant and other people will think is just lazy. So, yeah. Humor is, I mean, of all the things we can dissect in the world, every movie we've ever done here, everything we can do, everything is subjective. But is anything more subjective than humor? Who decides what they think is funny? That's funny. No, it's not. Stupid. You know, that's funny. No, it's not. It's dumb. That's really clever. No, it's actually really dumb. You know, like, that's got to be the most divisive and thing. Like, that's why, like, there's so much. It's so hard for in comedy to like age and be considered like universally great. Because even if you look at like some things that are still considered classics from like 100 years ago, people will be like talking about Buster Keaton and be like, wow, you know, that really holds up. There's people that say, absolutely, it does not hold up. It does not hold up. You know, I don't understand it. It's stupid and boring. And, you know, so yeah, humor is always changing. It's really hard to pick from anything from even a few decades ago and get everyone to be like, yeah, that's still funny. Because people are like, no.
Or like, you know, Blazing Saddles, you know, a pretty much universally loved comedy. Like, watching it with 2024 eyes, you're just offended every scene, you know, and that was kind of the point. But people had their skin back then, you know, and
right. I mean, I even taking humor aside, or even things that could be offensive, like, what's my favorite thing to do anytime we do a movie is I like to frame it in its historical context. Because it'd be like, if you're talking to some kid and you tell them how influential Blade Runner was, and then you watch Blade Runner with them, they're not going to appreciate it because they don't understand what the sci-fi landscape was in 1982. They've seen all the stuff that came after Blade Runner that ripped it off. So when they see Blade Runner, they're like, so when they see Blade Runner, they're like, oh, look, another futuristic city. And, you know, it's kind of mixed with, like, none of it's new to them or innovative. So, I mean,
they're not going to be impressed with matte paintings or, you know, rear projection, anything like that. Is they don't give a shit. This looks dumb. This looks fake, you know, but appreciate it for what it is, you know, like.
So I think that's always one of the most important things you have to do when you watch any movie is you really have to remember when it was made and what the circumstances were and what the landscape was. Because, in 1982, that was, you know, and I wouldn't say it's aged poorly. You just have to remember. Because, I mean, in a lot of the stuff, I would say that, like, so much sci-fi was so influenced by Blade Runner. Like, even the stuff that didn't try to still was. And most of it is not very good. It's like, was it as good? That's why, like, sequels are even hard. Like, there's another Alien coming out. But how can you have this? You can't have the same impact that Alien had in 1979. You can't. It's impossible. The Xenomorph was something we hadn't seen before, you know. Sci-fi movies in the 50s and 60s and through the 70s until Star Wars were basically silly B movies with, you know, small budgets and kind of ridiculous aliens. And most of the time, the aliens were way too human, even on Star Trek, because they have the limited budget. Like, it's like, wow, all the aliens are like the same size and humanoid build as us. Like, sure, they have weird makeup on their face, but it's like, realistically, wouldn't real aliens be completely different? And we've gotten really good now, but go back to 1979, I feel like Alien was one of the first movies that really did that with the Xenomorph. It's like, yeah, this is still kind of humanoid. It has arms and legs and a head, but it's still pretty fucking different. And it opened the door for us to go further and be kind of more realistic, what I'm going to say. Like, because aliens exist, they are nothing like us. Like,
getting further into that lore, the reason why it does look so humanoid is because it bursts out of a human. You know, depending on the animal that it comes out of, it can look completely different.
I mean, we won't go into a whole thing with Alien. We're going to wrap up soon, but I mean, again, that's
really cool concept.
Again, you can. It's not just because it's not just the design, right? You can have a new movie about new aliens, and you can have a sketch and it can be really cool and have like I don't know, the costume or the effect, and it looks really good, and that's good, but you still need more than that. And Xenomorph does, because the Xenomorph has a whole behavior pattern and a whole reproductive pattern that really make it stand out as unique. It starts off as an egg, and it's a face hugger, it needs to implant, and then that. It has acidy blood and has a little mouth. It has all these extra features. So it goes, you have your painting by H.R. Geiger, or whatever his name is, and it's fantastic. But then you take it and you still do more and more with it and make a truly unique creature. And I think sometimes when we're designing creatures, and I'm not trying to act like I could do it so well, but I just mean, you see a lot of movies that have like aliens or fantastic creatures. It's like, it didn't seem to go beyond, the concept of what it would look like. Okay, it looks good. I do like how it looks. That's a good original look. But then they don't do anything else with it. Like, they don't give it unique behavior or a reproductive thing or something like that. And you need to do all aspects to make it truly interesting. And that's why now that we're on like our 7th Alien or whatever, it's like we've seen it all kind of before. What more can you do?
Well, they're back to it's a man in a suit. So I'm sure it'll have CG in it, but
Oh yeah, you can't make a movie without it. But
I don't know really. That's what those films have been lacking. I don't think I think it's just been the scripts they've been going with. But
yeah,
I'll have low expectations. I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully, I can see it in the theater.
Yeah, I think I will see it in theater, because I mean, somehow I've seen every Alien in theater since Alien versus Predator. So that's a 20-year thing. And I mean, I at least got to see Aliens. I got to see that as a special re-release in theater, which was a lot of fun.
I've seen everyone since Alien 3 in theater.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Double feature with Encino Man.
That's so weird, but 1992 was a hell of a year.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll just do closing remarks on this movie.
I think it's a great coming of age tale. Well, yeah, I guess coming of age tale, but it's
black comedy coming of age. Sure.
Black comedy. It is kind of hard to watch, but it's tongue in cheek. So as all his stuff is.
Mm-hmm. Certain people, they just can't do it. Like I said, I'm surprised by how seriously some people take the movie. I don't take it that seriously. I see the funny side to it. You still care about her character, and I really do like the ending, which of course is a downer ending. In the ending, nothing's fixed, nothing's better. And and then in joining along with that song on the bus, it's like the ultimate sign of her just sort of realizing she just has to keep going. She has to conform and keep going. And it's depressing, but it's realistic. It's what a lot of us think. We all have different parts in our lives that are hard. That point in my life wasn't so hard. It had its moments. I relate to her in a lot of ways, but again, it wasn't nearly as serious as her. So at least I had a good family. Stuff like that. So, but yeah, there's got to be tons of people that can relate to exactly that. Yeah, I think. And they might feel cheated by an ending where suddenly her family learns to appreciate her. And again, the sadness of it, like when she falls asleep in New York, she dreams of a happy reason, right? Yeah. That she finds her sister and she rescues her. And so then her family is grateful and actually cares about her and appreciates her. But of course, it's just a dream. And then she calls home, finds that her sister is fine, and she's getting all this attention, and nobody even gives a shit that she's gone. And her brother tells her, just get back, you're going to get in trouble, when she's risked her life to try to save her sister who does not like her. And by the way, the other thing is, not to go too far, but back when we were talking about like pageants and stuff like that, that's exactly, it seems like that's going to be the path for that girl. She's already jumping around in a tutu. The mother loves her like she's her little doll. You can see, like, if they made an in-between movie, that might be it. Like the mother taking her to pageants and stuff like that, while continuing to completely neglect poor Dawn. But I get them mixed up. But in one of the movies, one of the sequels, either palindromes or I think it's palindromes. She might it shows Dawn older, and things have gotten just as bad, and she eventually kills herself, which is pretty fucking dark. And then Wiener Dog, I think, does a retcon where things are a little better for her. But I didn't see either movie. I want to. Palindrome sounds like it would be really hard to follow, but I'm sure I could figure it out.
Yeah, it's worth it though.
Yeah, in Palindrome, she goes to college, gains a lot of weight, becomes pregnant from date rape, and then kills herself. I mean, yikes.
Yeah. But that's his style, you know. He always covers like deep topics like that, like stuff that other people would be afraid to write a comedy about.
Oh, exactly. And it is very real. And just there's just so many gut punches in the movie of like dramatic irony and things like that. Like you start off right from the bat, like the ultimate injustice of her being picked on and then like standing up for herself and getting in trouble for it. Or her being cheated and somebody trying to cheat. So she tells on them and she gets in trouble for it. And then at the end of the movie, you know, like she has to get up in front of the school and thank the community for like their support during the difficult time of her sister missing. And they all just start chanting and mocking her. And then like the teachers eventually tell them to shut up, and they still expect her to like finish the speech, thanking these people that just see her as a joke and a punching bag. Like, ugh. I mean, there's just so much extra oomph in so many of these scenes where it's just like, damn.
Yeah.
But I still can kind of laugh. It's one of those you'll just have to laugh type thing. You can cry or laugh. I don't know. I choose to laugh, but because it is just a movie, as much as it does reflect reality. But yeah, I definitely want to watch the other movies. As you said, he's a very bold director, interested in showing stuff that exploring themes and stuff that most people don't, leads to controversy and people not getting it, but he isn't afraid to go there. I think we said back when you did Happiness about how you did that movie and finally got some good reviews and attention. He's like, oh, I finally realized that if I did movies that didn't have, you know, like that didn't have like child abuse and suicide and, you know, rape and all this stuff, people like it.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But I mean, I get it. And I mean, people will make it sound like, oh, he must be like a twisted guy. I don't think so. It's just sort of his creative voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the big mistakes people make when it comes to like fiction is like just assuming that if somebody like writes stuff that's dark, that they're like a really dark person. It doesn't necessarily work that way at all.
Right.
There's just some things we're better at doing than others, or appeal more to us than others.
Well, he's definitely etched out a very unique style for himself. That I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I really like this movie just as much, if not even more, than Happiness. So if you haven't seen our episode on that, that's not from too long ago. You can check that out. But yeah, since it was our first time back after a long time, I knew we'd stray off and blab about some other topics just because Jay and I have not had the chance to be on air together for a while. So we had some stuff to talk about. But again, we can't make any promises, but fingers crossed we're going to get some consistency and get some more episodes up without big pauses and delays in between them. And we also have some just sort of fun, laid-back live commentaries in the offering, hopefully, too, on his channel or my channel, stuff like that. So we're always hopeful that this will get us going, and we'll see what we can do. Some things are out of your control, but always with hope, we go forward.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. See you.